Chapter 81. Calligraphy was like Buddhism, it was about enlightenment. Ueno Nobita's calligraphy was indeed beautiful, but he could feel that he had reached a bottleneck. He had reached the end of the road, but he could not find any other way out. They either stood still or walked back the way they came. Ueno Nobita did not want to see either. Today, Fong Yan's words had awakened him from his confusion and allowed him to have a clear understanding of the path ahead of him. He had found an exit and could gallop on another road. Was this not the happiest thing? The two bows represented two completely different meanings. The first was a courtesy to thank Fong Yan for his praise. The second time was filled with sincere gratitude and respect. Every word was worth 1,000 taels of gold. Seeing Fong Yan conquer Ueno Nobita with just a few words, Saburo Fujino's heart broke. What was wrong with these students? Why did they just give up and surrender so easily? What did I teach you all? Have you forgotten the samurai spirit? He had already lost the first round of the tea ceremony competition. If he were to lose the second round of the calligraphy competition, how could he face his Japanese parents? Saburo Fujino did not care about Ueno Nobita's attitude towards Fong Yan and said, Ueno Nobita's calligraphy is flawed, but is Rosefinch's student's calligraphy not flawed? Matsushima Ki also spoke up, that's right. Fong Yan sensei, you just commented on Ueno Nobita's calligraphy. Now, you should also comment on Rosefinch's student's filial piety. Of course. Fong Yan nodded. To be honest, Xiao Pinqing wrote the word filial piety with the intention of using a trick. Because this is indeed the best word he has ever written. Of course, this is the mentality of any contestant. Ueno Nobita wrote swallow the sword and abandon the bow. Did he not have the intention of using a trick? Yes. In his heart, he would naturally feel that these were the few words he had written the best. Huaxia culture is broad and profound. Countless people were researching, countless people were learning and imitating. Fujino sensei in front of us was also a learner and researcher of Chinese culture. He studied poetry, songs, zither, chess, poetry, painting, the Book of Changes and the 8 trigrams. He studied everything he thought was worth studying. However, in my opinion, this research is only on the surface. It can't touch the core. What is the real culture of Huaxia? It was a traditional virtue that had been passed down for thousands of years. In 7 words, they were loyalty, filial piety, benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trustworthiness. These things could not be seen, nor could they be heard, but they were deeply embedded in the blood and marrow of every Huaxia citizen. As long as people were alive, they were alive. When a person dies, there will be countless successors. Filial piety is the most important of all virtues. Filial piety is a word that understands the shape and sound. The shape of this character was very ingenious. The upper half was half of the character Lao, while the lower half was the full character Z. The previous generation and the next generation merged into one. The son inherits the father, and the son can inherit his parents and follow his wishes. Fong Yan walked to the front of the bookshelf, pointed at Xiao Pinqing's calligraphy and said, let's look at the upper half of Xiao Pinqing's filial piety first. It is simple and unadorned, and the ink is vigorous. Doesn't it look like an old man with rich experience who dedicated his life to his children? Hearing Fong Yan's words, everyone admired it seriously. They really saw something different in this character. Kindness, sincerity, dedication, selflessness, and sadness. Fong Yan pointed at the lower half of the character and said, the old man is old, so he has a new son. Look at this upper half and the lower half, but only half of the character, Lao, is left. Where did the other half go? It was given to their children. Isn't that how parents are? The first half of their life is for themselves, and the second half is for their children. Just like the song "Where Has All Time Gone" sings, you're old before you can enjoy your youth. You've had children for a lifetime, and your mind is full of children's tears and laughter. Xiaopingqing Z is vigorous and delicate, representing the prosperity of his son, and also representing the healthy growth of his son. The layout of this filial piety is grand, and the structure is clear. The ink is thick when it should be thick, and light when it should be light. The brush is heavy when it should be heavy, and light when it should be light. It has feelings, temperament, and structure. This is why I think Xiaopingqing's calligraphy is better than Ueno Nobita's. Thank you, Mr. Fang, Xiaopingqing said gratefully. Fang Yan waved his hand, looked at Lu Chaoge, Matsushima Ji, and Duan Yujun, and said, "Judges, I'm done with my comments. It's up to you to decide who is better and who is worse." Lu Chaoge and Matsushima Ji looked at each other. Lu Chaoge spoke first and said, "Principal Matsushima, you are the guest, so you should comment first." Matsushima Ji refused and said, "Mr. Duan should start first." Duan Yujun stood between the two writing tables, looked at Ueno Nobita's calligraphy, and then looked at Xiaopingqing's calligraphy, looking hesitant. With so many people watching, the honest Duan Yujun was embarrassed to choose his family's calligraphy directly. "To be honest, both works are good," Duan Yujun said. "Both are good. It's much better than my handwriting." Everyone laughed and said, "Boss Duan, everyone knows that their calligraphy is better than yours. The key is whose calligraphy is better." "I choose filial piety," Duan Yujun said. "Not to mention anything else, this word makes me feel close. Can an unfilial person still be human?" Clatter, the students of Rosefinch Secondary applauded. Now one of the judges had turned to Xiaopingqing, and Xiaopingqing's victory was in sight. Matsushima Ji asked Lu Chaoge to comment again, and Lu Chaoge said without hesitation, "I choose filial piety. I like the feeling of a father and son being connected. I sensed a very deep emotion from this piece of calligraphy. This feeling." Lu Chaoge looked sad and said, "It's been a long time since we last met." Duan Yujun chose Xiaopingqing's filial piety, and Lu Chaoge also chose Xiaopingqing's filial piety. No matter how Matsushima Ji voted, Xiaopingqing was already the winner of this calligraphy competition. Of course, this also had something to do with the judging system. Because Duan Yujun and Lu Chaoge were both Hua Xiao's people, they would be biased towards the Rosefinch Secondary contestants. It was human nature. Matsushima Ji sighed softly and did not speak. Ueno Nobita walked to Matsushima Ji and bowed deeply to him. Then he raised his head and said, "Teacher, please grant me a request." "What is it?" Matsushima Ji asked. "Give this vote to my opponent," Ueno Daxio said. "I can feel the feelings he has when he wrote this calligraphy. I focus on the form, and he takes both the spirit and the form into consideration. In terms of calligraphy cultivation, I am not as good as him." Matsushima Ji pondered for a long time, then patted Ueno Nobita on the shoulder and said, "Ueno Nobita, I promise you." "Thank you, teacher." "I'm sorry. I'm not." Ueno Nobita smiled honestly. "Teacher, you can't imagine what I have gained from this trip to Huaxia. I can't wait to grind the ink and write. I can't wait to go back and tell my teacher, my mother, that I want to take a completely different path from her. She is herself, and I can't be her. I can only surpass her." "Good. Very good." Matsushima Ji also smiled happily. "Ueno Nobita, congratulations." "Thank you, teacher." Ueno Nobita bowed again. Matsushima Ji looked back at Lu Chaoge and said, "This vote is for filial piety." Clatter, the students all spontaneously applauded. Not only the students of Rosefinch Secondary, but even the teachers and students of Wuren Secondary also applauded. In the second match, Rosefinch Secondary won again. It was lunchtime, and Duan Yujun insisted on inviting the teachers and students of both schools for lunch. This time, Lu Chaoge strongly refused, saying that she had already disturbed them today. The school would be responsible for the lunch, and the school had specially allocated funds to entertain the delegation of Wuren. Both sides agreed that the third fencing match would be held at 3:00 in the afternoon. After lunch, the students of the delegation would return to the hotel to rest for a while. In the dessert shop at the entrance of the campus, Fang Yan and Tangqing sat opposite each other. Tangqing held a cup of iced lemon green tea in his hand, his eyes looking around without focus, looking very bored. "Student Tangqing, have you thought about it?" Fang Yan asked. "Teacher Fang Yan, I have answered you several times. I'm not going." "I have no interest in that kind of thing," Tangqing said impatiently. "What's your reason for refusing?" "I'm not interested." "Why not?" "I don't like it." Student Tangqing, the tea ceremony, calligraphy, and fencing matches between us and the Wuren delegation have attracted the attention of the entire class and even the entire school. Although friendship comes first, competition comes second, everyone hopes to win these 3 matches. Because everyone knows that winning or losing not only concerns the school's dignity, but also the dignity of our entire Huaxia. If we lose these 3 matches, will our Huaxia lose its dignity? Tangqing sneered. Student Tangqing, I know you think this is a small matter, and you think that winning or losing doesn't matter. But I don't think so. We should do our best in any match. We can't easily give up any opportunity. We have to win, and we have to keep winning. We have to win our dignity, and we have to win our confidence. We have to win our own confidence, and we have to take away their confidence. I want them to have no chance of winning in every confrontation with us. I want them to be wary of us every time they fight us. The national defense of a country not only depends on the strength of the army, but also the invincible will and ambition of every Huaxia person. Fang Yan looked at Tangqing with sincere eyes and said, "Student Tangqing, come out. Come out and help me win this match, and help yourself win this match." Chapter 82. Tangqing was silent, staring at Fang Yan with a burning gaze. "If I don't agree, does that mean I'm not patriotic?" Tangqing asked. Fang Yan was taken aback and said, "I hope you can do this. It has nothing to do with patriotism or not." "In that case, I still won't agree," Tangqing said with a sneer. "Teacher Fang Yan, why should I agree? Why should I agree? You made me kneel to you in front of the whole class, you made me kneel to you in front of Qinitian. Now, just because of a few words you said, just because of your bluff, I have to stand up and work for you. When you did that, did you think about my feelings? Did you think about how I'll face the strange looks of the students in the future? Did you think about what kind of gossip I'll encounter in the future? What's more hateful is, did you think about how I'll pass the harsh scrutiny of Qinitian? You can have whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. Everyone in the world has to revolve around you. Do you think you're the hero of a novel? Teacher Fang Yan, I'm not an idiot. I won't do it, I won't do it. No matter how extravagant your words are to make people's blood boil, I won't agree to it. I just want to see you lose. You can easily take away other people's dignity, why can't others take away your dignity? Anyway, this bet is between you and that Japanese teacher, what does it have to do with us? Tangqing took a sip of the iced lemon tea, moistened his throat, and said, "Besides, aren't you very good at fighting? If you're so good, can you go by yourself? If you go, I guarantee that no one can beat you." Fang Yan nodded and said, "That's true. If I go, who on their side will be a match for me? But, I can't do that. My identity is a teacher. If I were to fight, even if I won, they wouldn't be convinced. They would even think that our school doesn't have any outstanding students. If there's really no other choice, they would only send a teacher to fight. I can bear this misunderstanding and humiliation, but I can't tolerate my students being belittled and belittled by them. Mr. Fong is really great. Tang Ching had a conflict with Fong Yen on the first day he entered Class 9, so he had a grudge against him and was also on guard against him. Therefore, he didn't believe a single word that Fong Yen said. Besides, Fong Yen had already won 2 rounds in a row. If he won the 3rd round, wouldn't Chinitian think that he was different? Tang Ching was having a headache now. He didn't understand what kind of feelings Chinitian had for Fong Yen. It was impossible to say that it was love. He knew that a girl like Chinitian would not easily fall in love with any man. If that wasn't the case, why did she treat Fong Yen differently from others? Tang Ching used to think that his competitors were students. He didn't expect that even teachers would be included. It's really tiring to have a girlfriend who is too outstanding. Tang Ching thought in his heart. He felt like he didn't want to love anymore. Fong Yen waved his hand, looking carefree as if he had nothing to do with fame and fortune. It doesn't matter if I'm great or not. I'm just doing something that I can do. They sent a student to fight, and we can only send one student to fight. We not only have to win, but we also have to win them to be convinced. We have to convince them with force, and then move them with virtue. Slapping them twice and making them think that we're good people. Don't think too much. I'm not talking about you. You're my student. How can I hurt you like this? You can refuse. It's your right. No one has the right to interfere. Fong Yen sighed softly and said, however, what you said just now made me understand some of my shortcomings in my work. I'm still too young. I don't have rich experience as a student. If I changed the solution at that time, would the effect be better? This is something that I need to reflect and improve. Tang Ching looked at Fong Yen in surprise. This guy is so easy to talk to. Is he indirectly apologizing to me? Do you think an apology can buy people's hearts? Impossible. Tang Ching said. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean to apologize. I'm thinking, if I slapped you twice on the spot that day. Or if I directly knocked you down to the ground. Or... Fong Yen. Tang Ching shouted angrily. Is there anyone who begs people like this? Don't be angry. Let me finish, Fong Yen tried to persuade him. Isn't it better to be angry together? If I do that, you'll lose face and dignity. There won't be so many little girls around you anymore. The school hunk will no longer be you. Isn't that better? Fong Yen, don't go too far. Tang Ching clenched his fists so hard that cracking sounds could be heard. Fong Yen looked at Tang Ching's fists and said, Tang Ching, I can't fight the Japanese student, but can't I hit you? You can't beat me at all. You know this better than anyone else. If you were me, what would you do when your own student takes the initiative to provoke you and humiliate you in front of everyone or do something even more miserable? Pretend as if nothing had happened. Before I made you kneel, even if I wanted to think so, you might not agree to do it, right? I don't do anything. Kneel when you say so. Let you slap my face when you say so. Have whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. Have everyone in the world revolve around you. Do you think you're the male lead in a novel? Tang Ching was furious. Fong Yen actually dared to repeat his own words. This shameless plagiarist. There's a cause and there's an effect. Revenge must be taken. I'm a teacher and you're a student. I welcome people with a smile, but you want to show off your uniqueness as soon as you come in. This is something that no teacher can accept, right? If you hate me because of this, I can only say that your thinking is too immature. If you're really mature, you should work hard to learn and beat me up. Look, you can't argue with me, and you don't dare to beat me up. Someone like you has the nerve to be praised as the school hunk. If I were born 2 or 3 years later, what do you think would happen to you and Tangching in Rosefinch Secondary? You'd just be a minion following behind me. As a teacher, I firmly oppose campus romance. The most important thing for a student is to learn. Of course, I know you may not be willing to listen to me. Qin Etienne stood up and won the tea ceremony. Xiao Pinqing stood up and won the calligraphy competition. Tangching, if others know your choice, what do you think they will think of you? Do you think it's shameful for me to ask you to kneel down in public? Fang Yan sneered. That's not it. Far from it. Soon you'll know what kind of behavior is the most shameful thing. I'm not trying to put a label on you, nor am I trying to oppress you with my power. Tangching, I don't like you, and sometimes I even hate you. However, there's something I have to tell you. People living in this world must understand the true meaning of the phrase, "A wise man's words are a fearful thing." This is my good intention, I hope you can accept it. After saying so much, let's review the first question. Tangching, are you willing to stand up and accept the challenge? Tangching's mouth was slightly open, unsure of how to answer the question. Fang Yan's fingers gently tapped the surface of the table twice and said, I've been sitting in front of you for a long time, but you've never offered to buy me a glass of fruit juice. I'm also too embarrassed to buy it myself. That would make me look like a failure as a teacher. Tangching, in terms of respecting your teacher, you're really bad at it. I need to deduct your conduct points to remind you. After saying that, Fang Yan got up and left. Tangching stared at the half-filled cup of iced lemon tea in his hand, dumbfounded. Due to the 2 losses in the morning, Saburo Fujino was no longer as arrogant when he saw Fang Yan. His attitude was also not as tough. He took the initiative to greet Fang Yan and said with a smile, Teacher Fang Yan, today's weather is quite good. Fang Yan raised his head and looked at the gloomy sky. He thought to himself that it might rain soon. Autumn in Flower City was a rainy season. Moreover, there were many showers. One minute, the sun was shining brightly, and in the blink of an eye, it would be raining cats and dogs. Naturally, Fang Yan did not reject Saburo's good intentions. He said, Indeed. Today's weather is quite good. Friendship first, competition second. This trip to Huaxia has given us a rich harvest. I believe that through this series of exchange activities, we will be able to deepen the friendship between our 2 schools, allowing the students to promote each other and improve together. This will allow them to become useful talents for society and humanity as a whole. Isn't this the real purpose of us holding these exchange activities? Yes. That is the case. Fang Yan nodded his head. That is what we think as well. Then, the afternoon match, should we cancel the afternoon match? Fang Yan asked. Of course, if Teacher Fujino strongly requests it, we have no objections. After all, we must respect the true thoughts of our guests. Besides, winning 2 matches in a row in the morning has already made us feel embarrassed. The leaders of the school and I have been hesitating. For this 3rd match, should we continue to win? If we were to do so, would it be a breach of etiquette? Etiquette in face, there are times when it is difficult to choose. However, Teacher Fujino's suggestion has solved our problem. So, I will go report this to the school leaders. Is that all? Chapter 83. Some people would make you fall in love with them at first sight. Some people would make you want to beat them up. Clearly, in Saburo Fujino's eyes, Fang Yan belonged to the latter category. Saburo Fujino had challenged Fang Yan during his class. Even though he had hidden his trump card, Fang Yan had still won 2 matches in a row. This caused him to lose face. His heart was filled with grievance and discomfort. What caused him to vomit blood was the fact that the students who lost the match were praising Hua Xiao's teachers and students. Be it Chiba Kaoru or Ueno Nobuo, both of them had expressed their admiration for Hua Xiao's culture and spirit. They had also spoken highly of their opponents, saying that they had learned a lot from them. What kind of behavior was this? This was a slap to the face. He had just shouted out the slogan Tang and Song cultures in Japan, and they had been conquered by Hua Xiao's culture. Do they still want to be compatriots? Saburo Fujino was a smart person. He knew that he could not go against the general trend. Since both his teachers and students had a favorable impression of Hua Xiao's culture and Rosefinch Secondary, it would not be appropriate for him to be the only one hostile towards them. That would only cause others to think that he was narrow-minded and an anomaly. He was prepared to change his battle strategy. He would treat his enemies with a gentle and friendly attitude. However, he would show no mercy during the match. Only the victor would have the right to make fun of others. Was that not the case? He had already made up his mind. After the experts he sent out had slaughtered Rosefinch's students until they were crying for their parents, he would go and have a talk with Fang Yan. His expression would surely be quite ugly, right? They had already lost 2 matches. They were hoping to win back some face in the 3rd match. How could they cancel the match? If they were to cancel the match, then they would have no chance at all. Additionally, others would say something like this: Wu Ren is afraid of Rosefinch Secondary's victory and no longer dares to continue the match. This result was even harder to accept than losing the 3rd match. This was Wu Ren's shame. It was also Saburo's shame. He would never allow such a thing to happen. Seeing Fang Yan turn around to report to the leader, Saburo Fujino grabbed his arm and said, "Fang Yan, sensei. Fang Yan, sensei, you misunderstood my words. I have no intention of canceling the match. I mean, when will our afternoon match begin? Where is the venue? Not canceling the match." Fang Yan turned to look at Saburo Fujino. Not canceling the match. Saburo Fujino turned to look at Saburo. Saburo Fujino suddenly realized something. A smile appeared on his face as he said, "Could it be that teacher Fang Yan wants to cancel the competition? How is that possible?" Fang Yan naturally had to deny it. "I've already told you about our concerns. We don't want our 3 consecutive wins to affect the deep friendship between our 2 schools. Of course, this will also affect Wu Ren's confidence. As the host of this event, we have to think more comprehensively and in the long term. To what we do and do things, we need to finish. Is that not the case?" Saburo Fujino looked at Fang Yan and said with a smile, "I have heard that Rosefinch does not have a tradition of practicing swordsmanship. Could it be that Sensei Fang Yan wants to invite an expert from outside to accept the challenge? If that is the case, then we will have to surrender. This is Hua Xia. If you want to find 3 to 5 experts, it will not be an issue." Fang Yan's face turned serious and he said, "Our Rosefinch does not have a tradition of practicing swordsmanship. However, that does not mean that our school does not have any experts. Sensei Fujino, you can insult me, but you cannot belittle my students. In view of your unkind words, I have decided to challenge you. Let's duel the 2 of us in the 3rd round of the fencing competition. I am just a scholar without the strength to even trust a chicken. However, the integrity of a scholar does not allow me to take even half a step back. Life or death is up to fate. I am willing to sign a blood contract with you." Listening to Fang Yan's words, Saburo Fujino's heart was slightly moved. Fang Yan was taller than him, but he was not as big as him. Additionally, he was someone who paid more attention to training himself and had learned a few moves of Taekwondo. If he could openly beat up Fang Yan in front of everyone, he would be able to vent his anger and his students would certainly be inspired. However, he quickly rejected this tempting idea. After 2 days of contact, he felt that Fong Yen was a very cunning fellow. For him to take the initiative to challenge him meant that he must have a plan in mind. If he were to agree to his proposal, wouldn't he be walking right into his trap? I am not that stupid, Saburo Fujino thought to himself. He looked at Fong Yen with a straight face and said, "This is just my personal concern. I do not have any intention of belittling Rosefinch's students. In my eyes, Rosefinch's students are very outstanding and lovable. I am afraid that some teachers would only covet the glory of victory and bring in experts from outside the school to participate in the competition. In this way, even if they were to win the competition, the students would be disappointed. Face projects will only harm themselves and others. Just say it, do you want to accept my challenge or not?" Fong Yen said impatiently. "I am a teacher. This kind of matter should naturally be handled by my students. I believe in them, just like how they are willing to believe in me," Saburo Fujino said. "This is a show for the students. I will not snatch away the opportunity that belongs to them." Fong Yen looked at Saburo Fujino in surprise and said, "I thought only our school's director Li Mingqiang would be able to say such high-sounding words. It turns out that Teacher Fujino is even better than Director Li. What did you say?" "Teacher Fujino, you understand what I mean," Fong Yen smiled. "We are both language teachers. Our ability to understand words is deeper than others. Isn't that right?" Saburo Fujino felt like hitting someone again. He said, "There is no point in talking so much. Let's get ready for the competition. Our team members have already been chosen." "What about your team members?" "They have already been chosen," Fong Yen said confidently. "The kendo competition will be held in the school's taekwondo dojo. Like the art club, calligraphy club, literature club and gaming club, this was a club established by several students who loved taekwondo. Later, as the number of students participating increased, the school opened a dojo specifically for the taekwondo club to provide training for the students. When the members of Wuren's delegation saw the logo of the taekwondo dojo, a strange expression appeared on their faces. Saburo Fujino glanced at Fong Yen and said with a smile, "Teacher Fong Yen, could it be that the people of Huaxia are more committed to promoting the development of taekwondo? Huaxia preserves its own unique cultural characteristics and is also willing to accept some foreign cultures. As long as it is of good quality and beneficial to our citizens, we are happy to accept and promote it," Fong Yen said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing. "Regardless of what kind of culture it is, it will only become a part of our Huaxia country and cannot replace the mainstream culture. Some people like to eat steak and spaghetti, but have you seen any Huaxia family that eats steak and spaghetti every day? Rice, steamed buns, stir-fried vegetables and stew are our common dishes. We have such confidence." Saburo Fujino smiled and no longer said anything. He knew that he was no match for Fong Yen when it came to bickering. The taekwondo dojo was not closed to outsiders due to the competition today. Therefore, many students in Daoist attire could be seen practicing inside. Saburo Fujino pursed his lips when he saw the moves of the students and did not say anything. The president of the taekwondo club, Luo Yi, walked over and took the initiative to greet Lu Chaoga. He smiled and said, "Principal Lu, the venue has been prepared. You can start at any time." Luo Yi was a high school student and an influential figure in the school. He was very familiar with some of the school's leaders and teachers. Her attitude towards Lu Xiaoga was one of respect and intimacy, unlike the other students who were afraid and reserved. Lu Xiaoga nodded and said, "Thank you for your hard work. Principal Lu, you are too polite. We are also a part of Rosefinch Secondary and should do our part for the school." Luo Yi glanced at the Wuren inspection team and thought to himself, I wonder if there are any experts on their side. I hope that the competition will not be too disappointing. Chiba Hamu, step forward. Saburo Fujino shouted in Japanese. As soon as he finished speaking, a short boy wearing a Japanese school uniform walked out from the crowd. The boy was about 1.6 meters tall. When he walked, his body swayed from side to side. His posture looked a little strange, but his steps were light and natural. His footsteps were light and quick, and his white cloth shoes made almost no sound when he stepped on the wooden floor. The boy had a cute baby face, and the shape of his face was somewhat similar to Chiba Haumu's. Fong Yen looked at Chiba Haumu's expression and noticed that when she looked at Chiba Haumu, there was a gentle smile on her face. They should be siblings, Fong Yen guessed. Chiba Haumu noticed Fong Yan's gaze and nodded at him with a smile. He did not know if it was just a greeting or an affirmation that his guess was correct. Fong Yan smiled and quickly turned his head away. If someone with ulterior motives saw this, they would think that he was seducing a Japanese student. Chiba Haumu's brother naturally has the surname Chiba as well, Fong Yan thought to himself. He felt that the surname was somewhat familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere before. North Star One Blade Style. These shiny words suddenly popped up in Fong Yan's mind. North Star One Blade Style was a very popular swordsmanship school in Japan during the late Edo period. Its founder was Chiba Shusaku, the first master of the Chiba family and the founder of North Star One Blade Style. North Star One Blade Style set up the Black Martial Dojo in Nyanbashi, Edo. Together with Kishin Mishiryu's Scholar Gakuen Dojo and Shin-no-ryu's Warrior Training Dojo, they were known as the three great dojos of Edo. Didn't that old drunkard and his family specifically mention North Star One Blade Style when he was explaining the world of swordsmanship? Their founder's surname was Chiba. So, what relationship did Chiba Haumu and her brother have with the Chiba family? Chapter 84. Fong Yan's guess was right. Chiba Keiru and Chiba Haumu were really siblings, and they were indeed the descendants of Chiba Josua. The North Star Ito-ryu was a famous Japanese sword technique that had been passed down for hundreds of years. As a girl, Chiba Kaori was more inclined to enjoy the visual and sensory aspects of the tea ceremony. Chiba Takashi was a male descendant of the Chiba family. He had been trained by the family in swordsmanship and physical fitness since he was young. Both of them studied at Wurin High School, a famous private school in Japan. Both of them were well-known figures in the school. Chiba Kaori was gentle, beautiful, and had an outstanding temperament. She was also the president of the school's tea ceremony club. She was the undisputed goddess of the school. Her status in Wurin Senior High School was similar to that of Chinitian in Rosefinch. As for Chiba Haumu, he was adorable and skilled in swordsmanship. He was very popular with both boys and girls, and he had a group of hardcore supporters. This time, Saburo Fujino had taken the initiative to issue a challenge. Additionally, he had declared that he wanted to compete with Fong Yen in the way of tea, calligraphy, and fencing. Truth be told, he had dug a big hole for Fong Yen. Saburo Fujino had a clear understanding of the strength of his team members. They had a world-class tea master, a calligraphy master, and a kendo expert. If they were to compete in these three areas, wouldn't they be able to win 3 out of 3 matches? They would be able to trample Hua Xiao's team into the mud, leaving not even their bones behind. He did not guess the beginning correctly, nor could he guess the ending correctly. Chiba Kaori, whom he had high hopes for, had lost. Ueno Nobita had also lost. Now, he had placed all his hopes on Chiba Haumu. Teacher. Chiba Takashi stood before Saburo Fujino. Saburo Fujino patted Chiba Haumu's shoulder. He wanted to say something, but there was an inexplicable sadness in his heart. After a long while, he calmed down a little and said in a deep voice, "Please win." Chiba Haowu nodded with a smile and said, I understand, teacher. Chiba Haowu understood. All the members of the Wu Ren inspection team understood. They had already lost 2 rounds. If they lost the last round as well, then they would be shaved bald by Hua Xia. This was a great humiliation. Hence, the other students of Wu Ren University gathered around them. Good martial arts, good luck. Good fight. You must win. Qianya is good at martial arts. We believe in you. Chiba Sun walked up to Chiba Haowu and smiled silently. Just do your best. No, sister, I want to win. Chiba Haowu also smiled. His smile was as bright as the sun. What an adorable boy. Win back what you lost. The smile on Chiba Kori's face gradually faded. She seriously looked into Chiba Haomu's eyes and said, Little brother, don't mess around. This is war, Chiba Haomu said. Sister, there must be a winner and a loser in a war. If it wasn't like that, then the battle between martial artists would have lost its meaning. But, sister, no buts. Our family motto is courage and wisdom. Without hesitation. Saburo Fujino looked at Fong Yen and asked, Teacher Fong Yen, our team members have stepped forward. How long are you going to hide your contestants? Hua. A wooden door was pushed open from the inside. Tangqing, dressed in a white Taoist robe, walked out with a wooden sword in his hand. He said in a clear voice, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Clatter, the students of Rosefinch Secondary immediately applauded. Tangqing is so handsome. His outfit is really not bad. As expected of the school hunk. I can't help but admire him. I knew it was Tangqing. I heard that Tangqing's kung fu is very powerful. It had to be said that this kid, Tangqing, was praised by the girls of Rosefinch Secondary as the school hunk. He really did have some skill. Not to mention his dazzling results and outstanding skills, just the way he walked out in the white Taoist robe of the Taekwondo club while holding a wooden sword gave people the feeling of a handsome and elegant young man. His slender figure, exquisite facial features, and the natural arrogance he exuded made him really attractive to young girls. Fong Yen walked in front of Tangqing and said with a smile, Have you thought it through? I didn't come for you, Tangqing said. If you think that I'm participating in this competition because of you, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. It doesn't matter who you came for. As long as you stand here today, you will be my good student. Fong Yen patted Tangqing's shoulder. Tangqing frowned. In the end, he did not slap away Fong Yan's restless palm in front of everyone. The members of both sides were in place. Tangqing had already changed his attire and was ready to fight. Fong Yan looked at Saburo Fujino and said, Let your team members go in and change their clothes. Saburo Fujino said a few words to Chiba Haomu. Chiba Haomu nodded and followed Luo Yi to the changing room where the new Taoist robes were prepared. When Chiba Haomu came out wearing a black Taoist robe and holding a wooden sword of his choice, the match was about to begin. Luo Yi was the president of the Taekwondo club and the only judge for this competition. Fencing was different from other competitions. The winner and loser were clear at a glance. Therefore, there was no need for too many judges to vote. Luo Yi stood between the two of them and said in English that they could understand, Do you want to wear protective gear? Both Tangqing and Chiba Haomu shook their heads and refused. They did not have the habit of wearing protective gear. Since both sides have chosen not to wear protective gear, then I would like to propose 3 rules. First, you are not allowed to stab your opponent's vital parts. Second, the winning side is not allowed to kill anyone. Most importantly, when I say stop, you must stop immediately. He was afraid that the two of them would fight to the death. If that happened, things would become difficult to deal with. Although they were both using wooden swords, their fists could kill people. Not to mention, the wooden swords in the hands of these experts were not much different from real iron swords. Both Tangcheng and Chiba Haomu nodded to show that they understood. Luo Yi took 3 steps back and said, "Members from both sides, salute." Tangcheng and Chiba Haomu bowed to each other and performed the traditional etiquette. "Ready!" Luo Yi shouted. After the two of them had finished their preparations, Luo Yi shouted, "Ready!" Chiba Haomu was dressed in a black robe. He raised the wooden sword in his hand high, as though he wanted to cleave his opponent from head to toe. This was his usual starting stance, and it was also the stance that could best showcase his swordsmanship. Moreover, this move of his had a very famous name. It was called Silent Victory. This so-called silent duel meant that after the battle began, the victor would be decided before the bamboo blades in their hands struck each other. The other party didn't even have the chance to hit their own side, much less win. This move was imparted to the famous swordsman Takeyanagi Asashiro. Takeyanagi Asashiro was Chiba Haomu's opponent, but Chiba Haomu liked Takeyanagi Asashiro's fighting style very much. He had especially learned it. Tangcheng was dressed in white. He looked relaxed and casual as he sized up the Rosefinch secondary team. The match was about to begin, but Qin Etienne hadn't arrived yet. This made him feel both regretful and disappointed. One had to know that before he decided to participate in this competition, he had specially sent a message to Qin Etienne. Could it be that Qin Etienne's phone ran out of battery and was powered off? There were 3 ways to attack in Sword Dao: Killer Sword, Killer Move, and Killing Aura. Chiba Haomu's killing intent was released as he was ready to strike. His adorable face turned serious, and his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. He looked at Tangcheng with killing intent. He was only waiting for an opportunity to kill in one strike. At this moment, Chiba Haomu was cold, completely different from the image he usually gave others. If the usual Chiba Haomu was an innocent and cute bunny, the current Chiba Haomu was like a wolf on the hunt. Qin Etienne wasn't here, so the battle still had to continue. Tangcheng was amused when he saw Chiba Haomu's expression. This kid is quite serious. He looks like he wants to kill someone. When the corners of Tangcheng's mouth curled up, Chiba Haomu's chance had arrived. This was because he knew very well that when a person smiled, it was also when they were at their most relaxed. When the mood was relaxed, the body would naturally relax. This was the perfect time to defeat his opponent. Chiba Haomu slashed out with his sword, and the wind whistled like a flute. This was the sound of the bamboo sword cutting through the air. The sword hilt and blade were burning hot as if they were about to be burned. When an expert made a move, it was obvious whether he was skilled or not. The speed of the sword, the strong airflow caused by the friction in the air, and the aura that enveloped his entire body were enough to make people's hearts tremble. An expert. This guy was definitely an expert. Moreover, he wasn't an expert in the field of student fights. He wasn't the president of the Taekwondo club, nor was he the number 1 in Huaqing. His opponent was a professional, an adult, and an expert with sharp sword skills that could kill. Tangcheng was born into a family of armed escorts, and there were also experts in his family who practiced swordsmanship. The way they drew their swords was exactly the same as the one in front of him. In fact, after experiencing it for himself, this Japanese boy who smiled shyly just now was even more powerful. Tangcheng raised his sword to meet the attack. Crack, the 2 swords collided, and the wooden sword in Tangcheng's hand broke into 2. Although both swords were wooden, one was the attacker, and the other was the interceptor. One side had accumulated enough strength and momentum, while the other only wanted to block the attack. The T had spirit, and the sword had murderous intent. Chiba Haomu's wooden sword had murderous intent, while Tangcheng's didn't. Intent against intent, murderous intent against no murderous intent, and the one without murderous intent was naturally not a match for the other. Chiba Haomu seemed to have predicted this scene. After he broke the wooden sword in Tongqing's hand, he didn't retract his sword force, nor did he release his sword energy. The sword continued to slash downwards, aiming straight for Tongqing's head. "Don't!" The crowd shouted loudly. Some of the more timid girls couldn't help but close their eyes. They didn't dare to watch the tragedy that was about to happen. With Chiba Haomu's current momentum, if Tongqing's head was hit, it would definitely be split in half. Chapter 85. Wielding a killing sword in his hand, his intent was to kill the hearts of others. Chiba Haomu had grasped the essence of swordsmanship, learned sword techniques, nurtured killing intent, and was known as a high-level swordsman. At such a young age, he was able to attain such a level of attainment in swordsmanship. This was truly an amazing feat as expected of someone from a famed swordsmanship sect. With hundreds and thousands of years of experience, it was only natural for them to have a complete set of methods to cultivate high-quality talents. In this era, not only did they need to rely on their fathers, they also needed to rely on their grandfathers. This caused Fang Yan to become extremely furious. If even birth was unequal, what fairness could there be in this world? After thinking about his own life experience, the anger within Fang Yan's heart gradually dissipated. There were some things that they could not decide on. He himself felt quite helpless about it. After cutting down the wooden sword in Tongqing's hand, Chiba Haomu's sword momentum did not dissipate. Instead, he increased his speed and pursued after Tongqing's head. If he were to land a direct hit, Tongqing's head would likely be cut into two, just like the wooden sword. "Don't!" the spectators cried out. Even Saburo Fujino, Matsushima Kii, and the others were terrified. Although they wanted to win this match, they had no intention of injuring the students of the Fellowship Academy. If something were to happen to the students of Rosefinch Secondary, they would not be able to answer to their superiors when they return. Naturally, whether or not they would be able to return was a question that they would have to consider. Fang Yan frowned. This kid's swordsmanship is not bad, but his killing intent is too heavy. His sword move was a simple one. From the moment he cut down Tongqing's wooden sword to the moment he aimed for Tongqing's head, he did not change his move at all. However, his attack was faster and more ferocious. It appeared as though he would not rest until he managed to cut down Tongqing. Although Fang Yan did not have a good impression of Chiba Haomu, he did not shout out to stop him. He had tested out Tongqing's strength. If Tongqing could not dodge this attack, then he would be too disappointing. Mentality. The most important thing was one's mentality. If Tongqing remained indifferent, then Chinya Haowu would undoubtedly be the winner of this duel. Luo Yi did not exercise the referee's right to stop the match. Originally, he had a cynical attitude, thinking that this was just a child's game. It was really boring. Luo Yi and Tongqing were friends, so he was quite clear about Tongqing's skills. If it weren't for the fact that Tongqing didn't like these troublesome things, the Taekwondo dojo would have been overturned by him countless times. He had sparred with Tongqing before, so he knew how big the gap between him and Tongqing was. He was just a hobby, but Tongqing was a professional. If the swordsmen chosen by the East Asians were not strong enough, they wouldn't even be able to cut vegetables for Tongqing. It wasn't until Chiba Haomu's sword cut straight at Tongqing's head that he felt a little burned. This was how war should be. Tongqing did not disappoint Fang Yan and Luo Yi's expectations. At the beginning, he was a little careless. Compared with the opponent standing in front of him, he was more concerned about whether Chinitian came to watch his match. Of course, it was necessary to defeat his opponent. He just hoped that when he defeated his opponent, his goddess, Chinitian, happened to be watching from the side. When he defeated his opponent, Qin could say, "Tangqing is so handsome," or smile sweetly at him. Just a smile was enough. However, Qin did not show up at the match. This made him feel extremely disappointed. When he was in a bad mood, he couldn't help but feel a little down. When he saw the serious look on his opponent's face, he felt a little funny. It was also at this time that Chiba Haowu launched an attack. When Tangqing's wooden sword broke, he was lost for a moment. Before his brain could react, his body had already made the necessary response. He gripped the broken hilt with his right hand and used the hard hilt to block Chiba Haowu's wooden sword. His left hand had already grabbed the broken slender sword that had yet to fall to the ground. Clang! Tangqing's wrist strength was amazing. When he blocked Chiba Haowu's slash with one hand, his left hand grabbed the wooden sword and stabbed it at Chiba Haowu's abdomen. When these two guys fought, they would not stop until one of them died. Chiba Haowu knew that he had met an expert with extremely strong reflexes, so his sword would be useless. He retracted his sword and retreated. Only then did the distance between the two widen. Chiba Haowu gripped his sword with both hands again and raised it high above his head. Tangqing looked at the broken sword in his hand with a serious expression. His eyes also became unprecedentedly serious. They knew that his opponent was an expert worthy of respect. "Tangqing, do you want to change your sword?" Luo Yi asked. He was the referee, so he was naturally willing to make things easier for Tangqing. Luo Yi could also see that Chiba Haowu was very powerful. If Tangqing kept using a broken sword, he might really be taken advantage of by this Japanese. Tangqing shook his head. "No need. If he doesn't change his sword, I won't either." "Be careful," Luo Yi warned. He didn't force the issue. Tangqing threw the broken sword in his left hand to the ground, leaving only the broken sword in his right hand. The wooden sword split down the middle. Part of it fell off, while the other part remained on the hilt. Thus, the sword hilt became a sharp dagger. Using a short sword against a long sword would definitely be disadvantageous in terms of distance and gravity. However, as long as Tangqing could get close to Chiba Haowu and attack him at close range, the long sword in Chiba Haowu's hand would become a burden. Clang! The two charged at the same time. Chiba Haowu did the same thing as before, slashing down with 180 degrees of gravity. The difference was that he was faster, and the angle of his attack was more strange and tricky, making it difficult to guard against. Tangqing dodged to the side, the short sword in his hand stabbing toward Chiba Haowu's left ribs. So, the long sword in Chiba Haowu's hand quickly changed from a heavy slash to a horizontal slash, slashing toward Tangqing's neck. Tangqing's steps were graceful, and his body had already moved out of the attack range of the wooden sword. Both of them were young and full of vigor, wanting to win this match. Chiba Haowu's advantage lay in his speed and ruthlessness, while Tangqing's advantage lay in his agility and steadiness. The two of them fought with speed, and the flashes of their swords and blades dazzled the onlookers. Fong Yan glanced at Saburo Fujino, who was standing beside him, and found that he was staring at Tangqing with a surprised look on his face. Clearly, he didn't expect that a random student that Fong Yan had found would have such ability. He was actually able to fight invincible Wu Ren's Chiba Haowu to a draw. Originally, he thought that Qin Xiaoyan was scheming against him. Could it be that Qin Xiaoyan wanted to make him sad again? Saburo Fujino noticed that Fong Yan was looking at him and asked in a whisper, "This student, is he Rosefinch's student?" Of course, Fong Yan nodded his head with absolute certainty. "His name is Tangqing. You can take a look at the list of students in our class." As Fong Yan spoke, he pulled out a list from his pocket. Pointing at number 42, "Tangqing," he said, "that's him. He is the last one." Saburo Fujino's small eyes began to spin. Could it be that he had deliberately added Tongqing's name on the list in order to deal with my inspection? I know what you are suspecting. As Fang Yan spoke, he pulled out a student ID card from his pocket and said, "Look, this is student Tongqing's student ID card." Saburo Fujino accepted the student ID card and inspected it. It was indeed Tongqing's photo. His name and other information were all authentic. But, isn't this student ID card a little too new? Did it just get done? It was true that Tongqing's student ID card had just been completed. He had been transferred from Class 1 to Class 9. Naturally, he needed to report it to the school. The school would also need to issue a new student ID card for him. Fang Yan knew that Saburo Fujino was a paranoid person. Be it Qinitian, Xiao Pinqing or Tangqing, any one of these students would be an outstanding talent. How could they just happen to be in Class 9? Thus, Fang Yan had made preparations in advance. He had brought along the relevant ID cards of these students. Weren't you suspicious? You are welcome to check it out. Of course, this time, it was fortunate that Qinitian had been transferred to Class 9 in advance because of him. As for Tangqing, he had been transferred to Class 9 in order to follow Qinitian. Without the help of these two experts, Fang Yan would not have so easily agreed to compete with the Wu Ren inspection team in the way of tea and fencing. In the past, the school would let the students of Class 1 be in charge of receiving inspection teams from outside the school. A straw in the wind. From the performance of Qinitian and Tangqing, Class 1 was indeed full of talents and elites. What Fang Yan did not know was that Qinitian and Tangqing were originally the top 3 students in Class 1. They were elites that the teachers of Class 1 treated like treasures. The two of them skipped Class 1 after the other, causing Class 1's teacher in charge to be heartbroken. He hated Fang Yan to the core. If it were not for Lu Chaoge speaking up for Fang Yan, Class 1's teacher in charge would have long since jumped out and thrown a pair of white gloves at Fang Yan's face. It was just done, Fang Yan answered honestly. The smile on Saburo Fujino's face grew wider and he said, "Then, is there such a possibility? Tangqing was not originally a student in your class. Is he a student from another class or school? For the sake of this competition, did you specially invite him over?" Fang Yan looked at Saburo Fujino with a smile and said, "Fujino-sensei's questioning expression is truly amusing. Like a cute woman." "Teacher Fang Yan, what do you mean by that?" Saburo Fujino stared at Fang Yan warily. This fellow could not possibly have that kind of hobby, right? I am a decent person. I have heard that there are 2 types of women. Those who are good-looking but unreasonable and those who are not good-looking but unreasonable. I feel that Teacher Fujino is very similar to the second type of woman. Fang Yan. Saburo Fujino was truly furious. He could still accept being called a woman. However, calling him an ugly woman was beyond the limits of what he could accept. "Teacher Fujino, are you a sore loser?" Fang Yan asked with a straight face. Chapter 86. Who is a sore loser? Saburo Fujino was like a rabbit that had its tail stepped on as he screamed out. If that is not the case, why would Teacher Fujino keep picking on such minor flaws? I cannot help but suspect that Teacher Fujino is looking for an excuse for his own failure, Fang Yan sneered. Seeing the 2 clowns bickering again, Lu Chaoge gave them a glance before turning her attention back to the intense battle taking place in the middle of the arena. Matsushima Ki shook his head. He was helpless against these 2 fellows. I am afraid that you will cheat, Saburo Fujino said with confidence. This is your territory. Who knows what kind of arrangements you will make in order to win. This is a classic example of measuring the heart of a gentleman with one's own yardstick, Fang Yan said with a ridiculing tone. Did anyone invite you to listen in on Class 9? Saburo Fujino thought about it. Back then, Vice Principal Matsushima Ki was the one who suggested to listen in on Class 9. When Matsushima Ki saw that Fong Yen was able to become Rosefinch's language teacher at such a young age, he became curious and suggested to listen in on Class 9. In other words, it was a random inspection and no one had arranged for it. No, Saburo Fujino said. Who suggested the tea ceremony, calligraphy, and fencing competitions? It was me. If that is the case, shouldn't I be the one questioning the school's deliberate arrangements? Why are you questioning us? Fong Yen said with a chuckle. He pointed at Chiba Kaoru, Ueno Nobita, and Chiba Haomu, who was brandishing his sword. Do you dare swear to all the deities of the two countries that they are not the candidates that you have arranged in advance? Or is it because you already knew that there was such an expert in your team? That's why you deliberately proposed these 3 competitions. Our school has many talents. It is not just these 3 competitions. Saburo Fujino said stubbornly. He was not willing to admit that he had planned this out, and the result was a painful truth. Is that so? Then, shall we add 3 more competitions? Fong Yen said with a smile. Saburo Fujino did not dare to agree. Rosefinch had won 2 of the 3 matches he had arranged in advance. If Rosefinch proposed the competition, would they still have a chance of winning? It was one thing for others to humiliate him, but did he have to humiliate himself as well? What? Are you unwilling? I don't have enough time to arrange it. Saburo Fujino finally found a plausible excuse. We're going back tomorrow. A student's homework cannot be delayed. You see, you have all taken advantage of us, but Fujino-sensei is still suspicious of us. If you really think that there's something wrong with the 3 students I've chosen, their student files and information are all in the school's archives. You can check them at any time. This can't be faked, right? However, I'd like to ask, are the 20 students from the Wuren delegation all in the same class? Naturally not, Saburo Fujino replied. We are selecting based on merit. It's the same every year. This is Wu Ren's rule. Exactly. You will select outstanding students from the entire school or even the entire country to form a team. We are only selecting students from Wuren High School to be sent out, Saburo Fujino corrected. Who selected students from all over the country to participate in the competition? Was there a need for that? Who knows what happened to you all in Japan? I have no way of checking their student IDs and files. Fong Yen waved his hand. Saburo Fujino felt as though he had been stabbed in the chest. The feeling of being drenched in blood. You are sending outstanding students from all over the country to compete against students from the same class. Do you feel guilty for doing this? Fong Yen said with righteous indignation. Although we know that this is unfair to us, we did not refuse. Why? Because we consider you all as our guests, our close comrades. But Fujino-sensei, how did you treat us? Is this how East Asians treat their friends? I'm sorry. Saburo Fujino was deeply moved and he blurted out those 3 words. After saying those words, Saburo Fujino reacted. Why did I have to apologize to him? This fellow's stomach is full of evil tricks. Who knows which of his words is the truth and which is the lie? Fujino-sensei, you are able to recognize your own mistakes and be a narrow-minded person. Moreover, you are willing to sincerely apologize to me. Fong Yen held Saburo Fujino's hand and said with a sincere face, I will consider accepting your offer. As the 2 of them were bickering, the battle between Chiba Haomu and Tangqing had reached its climax. Luo Yi followed closely behind Chiba Haomu and Tangqing, shouting incessantly. Occasionally, he would even shout out words like good sword, despicable sword. It was as though he was the one participating in the battle. The baby-faced Chiba Haomu had entered a berserk state. His hair was disheveled and his eyes were sharp. The black Taoist robes he wore fluttered in the wind. Every step he took forward or backward would cause the wind to howl. He had inherited the essence of the North Star one-blade style. His sword attacks were simple, but the angles were strange. Every one of his sword attacks was aimed at the vital spots of his opponent. Add that to his ghostly speed when moving at full speed, it was impossible to defend against his attacks. Tongqing's deep foundation came in handy at this moment. He was able to deal with the myriad of changes by remaining unchanging. His body was tall and his movements were slow. Standing there, he was like a target, allowing Chiba Haomu to attack him from all directions, making him extremely busy. Tongqing changed his strategy. Originally, he had wanted to fight Chiba Haomu with speed and end the battle in the shortest amount of time possible. That way, he would look more handsome. However, when he found that he could not defeat Chiba Haomu in a short amount of time and that Chiba Haomu was better at speed than him, he knew that something was amiss. Rhythm. Everyone had their own unique rhythm. This was also the rhythm that they were best at. Chiba Haomu liked speed, but Tongqing's foundation was solid. Additionally, his swordsmanship was methodical, making it more suitable for him to stay still. He could not follow Chiba Haomu's rhythm. He wanted to control the rhythm himself. Or rather, he wanted to make full use of his own rhythm. Thus, it became a situation where one was fast on the offense and the other was slow on the defense. It was precisely because both of them made full use of what they were good at that the battle was so exciting. Dash! The long sword in his hand swung down with great force, aiming for Tongqing's face. Tongqing blocked the attack with his short dagger. He took a few steps forward and directly crashed into Chiba Haomu's chest. Chiba Haomu's sword was raised in the air. His chest was empty, and he lost control of his inner line. However, he changed his moves extremely quickly and viciously. Whoosh! The wooden sword in his hand made a 180-degree turn. Initially, the tip of the sword was pointing outwards, but when he hooked his wrist, the tip of the sword stabbed at Tongqing, who was in his arms. To an onlooker, it was almost a suicidal move. If he was holding a real sword in his hand, then when he stabbed Tongqing's body, it would be inevitable that he would also stab himself. However, he knew the characteristics of a wooden sword very well. He knew the weight of the sword and the speed at which he attacked, and what kind of damage he would inflict on his opponent. Clang! Tongqing once again blocked the tip of the long sword with the hilt of the sword and slammed his elbow backward. Chiba Haomu had two choices now. He could either endure the elbow attack and persist in stabbing his long sword into Tongqing's chest. Or, he could dodge the elbow attack, and his suicidal attack would be nullified at the same time. Chiba Haomu chose the former. In a battle where both sides were evenly matched, the only thing left to do was to make a choice. A smart person would kill 1,000 enemies at the cost of 800 of himself, while a fool would kill 800 enemies at the cost of 1,000 injuries. Victory and defeat would be decided in this way. He could withstand the elbow attack, but he believed that Tongqing would not be able to withstand the full force of his piercing technique. Ugh! Chiba Haomu grunted. His upper body fell backwards, but his lower body was unusually stable. Creak! The tip of the long sword in his hand moved forward with unstoppable force, grinding against the hilt. The tip of the sword inched closer to Tongqing's chest. As long as it pierced through, Tongqing would instantly lose the ability to fight. Of course, he would lose the ability to fight forever. Ah! A miserable scream rang out. The wooden sword in Chiba Haomu's hand fell to the ground. He clutched his abdomen with his right hand and staggered backward. Plop! His body fell on the wooden floor with a hideous expression. His forehead was dripping with sweat, and he looked like he was in extreme pain. Tongqing stood still and sneered at Chiba Haomu, who was sitting on the ground. The sword hilt that he had been holding in his left hand to block the tip of the sword had been transferred to his right hand, and red blood was seeping out from the blade. Chiba Haomu. A group of people rushed over and surrounded Chiba Haomu. Saburo Fujino rushed to the front of Tangqing and roared, "Kid, you bastard, what did you do to him? What did you do to him?" Chiba Kaori's face was covered in tears as she cried, "Haomu, little brother, are you okay? How do you feel?" Matsushima Nori was a beat too slow to squeeze into the middle of the crowd. Her expression was ugly as she stared sharply at Lu Chaoge and said, "If anything happens to my student, we will definitely seek justice." Lu Chaoge calmly looked at Matsushima Nori and said, "We also don't want this to happen. Of course, I will respect any choice you make." Tangqing walked to the front of Fang Yen and threw the sword hilt in his hand to the ground. He said in a free and easy manner, "I won." After saying that, he turned around and left. "Be careful!" someone shouted. Chiba Haomu, who was lying on the ground a moment ago, jumped up and stabbed the sword in his hand at Tangqing's back. This kid's eyes were bloodshot. Chapter 87. Tangqing walked away proudly and carefreely. He was proud of the fact that he had just won a match. Moreover, it was a very good match. Although Qin Etian didn't get to see it with his own eyes, he had won in front of Fang Yen. Let's see if this guy still dares to belittle and bully me like this in the future. Free and easy was the image he always presented to others. As the most handsome guy in Vermilion Bird Middle School, he needed to put on airs at all times to be a good spokesperson. This was just a match between students, and he really didn't want to think too much about it. A loss was a loss, and a win was a win. Now that the outcome had been decided, what was there to argue about? However, what Tangqing didn't expect was that Chiba Haomu didn't give up just because he thought that the match was over. While a group of people surrounded him and looked at him with concern, Chiba Haomu grabbed the wooden sword on the ground and jumped up, thrusting the tip of the long sword at Tangqing's back. He couldn't accept this. He couldn't lose. He wanted to prove to his compatriots and himself that he was invincible. It happened so suddenly that Tangqing wasn't prepared at all. When he heard someone shouting behind him, he turned around in surprise. He couldn't believe that Chiba Haomu still dared to stab someone with his sword after the match was over. Thus, Chiba Haomu's sword that was originally aimed at his back became his heart. Anyone who had watched Animal World would know that when an animal struggled on its deathbed, it could explode with shocking destructive power. When a swordsman was determined to win, he could also perform beyond his usual level. Great sword chi technique. Great sword chi technique. His movements were graceful and ruthless, and his speed was as fast as lightning. He had just jumped up, and in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Tangqing. The long sword closed an inch by inch, and was about to pierce a large hole in Tangqing's chest. Tangqing felt the sharp killing intent, and his body tensed up. It was a natural reaction when facing extreme danger. There was a burning pain in his chest, which was caused by the sword chi that had attacked him first. Hiss, the oxygen in the air rubbed against the lightning-fast wooden sword, producing a hissing sound. That was the sound of the air being stimulated and ignited. The wooden sword was too hot, and the tip of the sword was scorching hot. It looked like it was about to catch fire. After practicing swordsmanship for more than 10 years, this was the best sword thrust Chinya Haomu had ever performed. This was his highest level. This was a realm he had never reached before. Today, he did it. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were bloodshot. He was laughing. It was a ferocious and joyous smile. For this sword that he had thrust out with the highest level. Tangqing was dumbfounded. If this was a battlefield, If it was a formal battle just now, with his ability, he could definitely make the most exquisite and accurate reaction or counterattack. However, at this moment, he was at a loss. What was this? Were they going to continue fighting? Or, would they fight to the death? However, what was the attitude of the school? Could he do that? Why? His pupils dilated and his heart was in a mess. Chi. He felt the tip of the sword pierce through his clothes. The wooden sword was about to continue forward, piercing through his flesh and organs. Everything it encountered, even his bones. Qianye Hao felt it too. There was only one focus in his eyes, and that was where the tip of the sword was. He felt the sound of a sharp sword piercing through something. It was a clear and melodious sound that seemed to come from the depths of his soul. Such a voice filled him with fighting spirit and a sense of accomplishment. Tangqing retreated, and retreated again. However, how could this aimless retreating speed compare to Qianye Hao's flying speed? Kill! Qianye Hao roared. As he roared, his dantian was full of qi, allowing him to fly faster and more nimbly in the air. All of a sudden, the entire scene underwent a drastic change. Tangqing was still retreating out of habit, while Qianye Hao's body stopped in the air. The difference between these two extremes was strange and distorted. No matter how hard he tried, the sword could not move forward. Everyone's eyes widened as they watched this unbelievable scene unfold before them. A gust of wind blew, fluttering Qianye Hao's black robes, Tangqing's white robes, and Fang Yan's soft hair. It was still alive. Everything was alive. It was just that Fang Yan, the time magician, had a little control over it. Fang Yan's body was tilted, one hand holding onto Qianye Hao's ankle. He had not used his other hand yet. When Chiba Hao passed by Fang Yan, the only thing he could do was to turn around 180 degrees and grab at the same time, seeing that he had the situation under control and that Tangqing had not been pierced by Qianye Hao's sword. Fang Yan finally felt relieved. If someone had died, everyone present would not be able to escape responsibility. Whether it was Lu Chaoga, Matsushima Ki, Saburo Fujino, or himself, all of the teachers would face serious charges. Qianye Hao, for the sake of victory, to satisfy his own selfish desires, he had disregarded the lives of others and the future of a large group of teachers. This narrow-minded madman, this bloodthirsty demon. Fang Yan was enraged. Qianye Hao's actions had thoroughly enraged him. Fang Yan's right hand pulled hard, and Qianye Hao's body flew back. Qianye Hao stabbed back with his sword, but Fang Yan's left hand shot out like lightning and punched his wrist. Clang! Qianye Hao felt pain in his arm, and the wooden sword fell to the ground. After using the power of Tai Chi to dissipate the remaining power in his body, Qianye Hao became Fang Yan's meat target. He grabbed Qianye Hao's calf with one hand, and with his left foot as the axis, he kicked with his right foot. His body immediately spun, and Qianye Hao's body, which was still in the air, spun with him. Fang Yan's right foot kicked again, and they spun even faster. Thousand-faced spinning top. At first, Fang Yan needed to borrow external force, but when their bodies spun at a certain speed, Fang Yan became the axis, and Qianye Hao became the pendulum. Now, Qianye Hao's body was dragging Fang Yan to spin. Whoosh, 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 everyone could only hear the whistling wind, like an electric fan spinning at a high frequency. In the beginning, they could still see Fang Yan's cold face and Qianye Hao's frightened eyes. Soon, they became a shadow of the wind. They were standing in front of you, but you couldn't see them clearly. They had countless faces swaying in front of you, and your eyes couldn't take them in. This time, it was the people around them who were worried about Qianye Hao. Let go of Qianye Hao, let go of him, Fang Yan. What are you doing? Principal Lu, ask your teacher to let go of him. Lu Chaoga's face was as cold as frost, and she said in a cold voice, my students are rational, and so is my teacher. I have full confidence in them. Lu Chaoga was fighting back. I have confidence in my teacher and students, but do you have the same confidence? If you have confidence in your students, then what kind of behavior did the scene that just happened in front of your eyes belong to? Matsushima Nori was speechless, and after a long time, he said, we have to find a gentler solution. Chiba Hawu was really frightened, and she ran over to grab Matsushima Nori's hand, saying, Principal, please save Chinya Hawu. Please save Chinya Hawu. Matsushima Nori glanced at Fong Yen, who was still spinning in circles, and shook his head, indicating that there was nothing he could do. She couldn't go up and beat up Fong Yen, could she? Chiba Hawu ran to Lu Chaoga and said in English, Principal, I apologize. I know Chinya Hawu. He's too ridiculous, but he's just a child. But, he's still a child, please save him. Everyone has to pay the price for doing something wrong, Lu Chaoga said with a straight face. After saying that, she felt that it was a little familiar. Who said that to her? Fong Yen spun faster and faster, as if he had really turned into a spinning top. If the little flags on the Spring Festival Gala were to spin at this speed, they wouldn't even last 10 minutes. When they reached a subtle speed, Fong Yen suddenly let go of Chinya Hawu's ankle. Chinya Hamu was like an arrow that was shot out, flying forward quickly. Before Chiba Hawu could rejoice, she saw Fong Yen running in the direction where Chinya Hawu was flying. Fong Yen ran forward, and when his toes touched the ground, he bounced up and landed without a sound. He was running on the ground, while Chinya Hawu was flying in the air. From a bystander's point of view, it looked like Fong Yen was running with Chinya Hawu on his back. Of course, Fong Yen wasn't running with him on his back. He had other uses for his hands. Bang, 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 his fists shot out like lightning, hitting Chinya Hawu's head, face, chest, abdomen, and every other part of his body that he could reach. With each punch, Chinya Hawu's body would rise and fall at an even faster speed. Fong Yen punched again and sent Chinya Hawu flying higher into the air. The dojo was huge. Fong Yen pulled Chinya Hawu's body from the entrance to the inner wall. Seeing that Chinya Hawu's head was about to hit the wall in front of him, Fong Yen suddenly did a 180-degree handstand. With both hands on the ground, he kicked with his right foot at lightning speed. Bang! What a beautiful shot. Chinya Hawu's body flew high into the roof of the dojo and then fell at a speed that was difficult to see with the naked eye. Clang! His body fell heavily on the wooden board, and he landed face first on the ground with his butt facing the sky. He didn't move or make a sound for a long time. The entire venue was silent. Everyone stared at Fong Yen with widened eyes. They looked at the handsome and tall man standing in the middle of the dojo. Was he a Superman hidden in the human world? Chapter 88. If you are given the freedom to choose your teacher, what qualities and abilities do you want your teacher to possess? Handsome and confident, someone said. Knowledgeable and knowledgeable, someone else said. Amiable and able to get along well with the students. This was the common wish of the students. There might be 1,000 answers to this question, but not a single student would request for their teacher to know martial arts. Martial arts was one of the traditions of Huaxia and one of the labels of Huaxia's culture. Even some foreigners would praise Huaxia's martial arts. However, how many of them had actually seen it in action? In the eyes of the ordinary students, the fight between Tengqing and Chiba Haomu had already exceeded their scope of understanding. They felt that it was impossible for something like that to happen. This kind of martial arts was too distant from their lives. However, when Fong Yen suddenly unleashed his universe like a Saint Seiya and threw Chiba Haomu into the air, they looked at Fang Yen as if they were looking at an alien. Was this still the Fang Yen teacher they knew, the one who read poems on the Bird River? Was this still the Fang Yen teacher who led them to the alley to learn Alley in the Rain? Was this still the Fang Yen teacher who was sharp with his words, lively and interesting in class, and looked like the big brother next door? The students were all filled with admiration and worship. Their bodies were trembling, and they were so excited that they could not control themselves. Matsushima Ki's face was filled with shock as he stared at Fang Yen for a long time. He had even temporarily forgotten to check on Chiba Hamu's injuries. Is there anything else I don't know? Lu Chaoge murmured as she looked at Fang Yan's eyes thoughtfully. Although she had not known Fang Yan for long, she believed that she had some understanding of him. Talented, arrogant, quick-witted and courageous. What she saw today had overturned her understanding of Fang Yan. She knew that the Fang Yan she had seen before was only the tip of the iceberg. What else was he hiding? Saburo Fujino's body was trembling. It was not surprise or admiration, but anger. This bastard, this guy who deserves to be struck by lightning, he has challenged me time and time again. Is this the weak scholar he was talking about? Is this what he meant by being powerless? Saburo Fujino could imagine it. If he had accepted Fang Yan's challenge, even if it was just once, the one lying on the same spot as Chiba Hamu would be him. When he thought of Chinya Hawu, he also thought of the situation they were currently facing. Saburo Fujino quickly rushed over to the spot where Chiba Hamu had fallen. He grabbed Chiba Hamu's shoulder and shook him. Chiba Hamu, how are you? Wake up. Hearing Saburo Fujino's shout, the others reacted. Kei Matsushima, Chiba Kaoru, and the teachers and students of the Warren investigation team gathered around him. They looked at Chiba Hamu's body worriedly. Even now, his eyes were still closed and he did not move at all. He didn't know what was going on. If you continue to shake him, his bones will fall apart, Fang Yen said coldly. He just couldn't understand why some people would hug and shake someone when they saw someone fainting on the ground. Didn't they know that this kind of action could sometimes kill someone? After the high-intensity exercise earlier, Fang Yen had vented out most of the anger in his heart. He was also a martial artist. Moreover, he was a martial artist with style and morals. After thousands of years, the words martial art moral had been deeply engraved in the blood of every martial artist. Regardless of whether it was a sect or a family, martial artists must first cultivate their morals. If one's morals were not right, one's martial arts would not be pure. Those who learned martial arts and used it to harm others would be known as demons in the past. Now, they would be known as scum. Fang Yan was strict with himself and he abided by the ancient spirit of martial art moral. Thus, when he saw scum like Chiba Hamu appear, his mood was particularly bad. If such a person was in ancient times, everyone would have the right to punish him. Moreover, the consequences of Chiba Hamu's actions were too serious. He only wanted to win, he only wanted to stab out with his sword. If he were to succeed, how would they end up? How would Rosefinch Secondary end up? How would his dearest, most respected and most beloved Lu Chaoge end up? For a moment, Fang Yan's rationality was overshadowed by his anger. He gulped down a mouthful of saliva with the smell of blood. Thus, he spun, chased and sent him flying with a kick. Only by doing so would his heart feel better. Hearing Fang Yan's words, Fujino Saburo quickly loosened his grip on Chiba Hamu's shoulder. Fang Yan. Fujino Saburo shouted at Fang Yan. Fujino-sensei, do you want to reason with me? Fang Yan stared at Fujino Saburo with a sharp gaze and spoke in an unfriendly tone. Fujino Saburo was a little afraid of Fang Yan. Teacher Fang Yan. Matsushima Ki's voice was calm. However, it was clearly more intimidating compared to Fujino Saburo's shout. What happened to Chiba Haomu? If anything happens to him, you will bear all the responsibility. If he does not die, I will bear all the responsibility. If he dies, the school will bear all the responsibility, Fong Yen sneered. Similarly, if anything happens to my student, you will also bear all the responsibility. Fong Yen turned to look at Tangqing and asked, You have not fainted yet? What? Tangqing looked at Fong Yen with a confused expression. So many things had happened so suddenly that he was still in a daze. Wasn't it just a friendly match? How did it end up like this? Don't you feel dizzy and your internal organs are on fire? Don't you feel like you are about to faint? Fong Yen asked. Only then did Tangqing understand. He clutched his chest and shouted, My heart is in so much pain. I cannot take it anymore. I cannot take it anymore. Plop. Tangqing shamelessly lay down at the entrance of the building. His posture was very unsightly. Fong Yan pointed at Tangqing, who was lying on the floor, and said angrily, This was originally a match to deepen our understanding and friendship. Our side has always adhered to the principle of friendship first, competition second. We have always been respectful and modest, courteous and restrained. What did you do? Ambushing someone when the match is already over, what kind of behavior is that? This is a shameful behavior, a shameless behavior. Chiba Haomu's sneak attack caused our team member to be seriously injured and he is currently unconscious. If anything happens to Tangqing, we will use the most severe and violent means to demand justice. Rosefinch is not someone that can be bullied so easily. Saburo Fujino and Ki Matsushima exchanged glances and understood the meaning behind those words, fake injuries. They knew that Tangqing had deliberately lied down on the floor and his injuries were not that serious. However, if they insisted that Chiba Haomu's sneak attack caused Tangqing to be seriously injured and that he was still unconscious, there was nothing they could do. They could not just run to the sickbed and point at Tangqing and shout that he was faking injuries and that he was actually fine. Whether his body was injured or not, they could easily find out. Whether his head was injured or not, how could they be sure? Ki Matsushima looked at Lu Chaoga, implying that she needed to make a decision on this matter. After all, this happened in Rosefinch's territory. Lu Chaoga looked at Fong Yen and said, Send the injured team member to the hospital for treatment. Fong Yen nodded and said, Of course. However, this matter is not over. When Tangqing opened his eyes, only Fong Yen was sitting beside him. The others had all left. Tangqing's injuries were not serious, but they were not light either. Although Chiba Haomu's sword did not pierce through his body, it did cut his flesh. If Fong Yen had not grabbed Chiba Haomu's ankle, the consequences would have been terrible. In addition, he had exercised too much in the afternoon. As he was undergoing one checkup after another, he unknowingly fell asleep. When he woke up again, his exhaustion disappeared and he felt much better. Don't be so fast. Fong Yen said. If Chiba Haomu is unconscious for 1 day, you will be unconscious for 2 days. If Chiba Haomu is lying here for half a year, you will be lying here for half a year and a day. We must endure longer than them. There is no need to do this, right? Tangqing said with a bitter face. If what Fong Yen said was true, Chiba Haomu would not recover after half a year. Would he really have to spend half a year on the sickbed? He felt that he would go crazy. Moreover, how could he pursue Qinitian while lying on the sickbed? If Qinitian was snatched away by another boy while he was lying on the sickbed, who would be responsible? He was a boy with dreams and goals. There were too many things for him to consider. Who am I? Fong Yen pointed at his face and asked. Fong Yen. Tangqing looked at Fong Yen with a puzzled expression. What was wrong with this guy? Did he not even know who he was? Teacher, the language teacher of class 9. No, I am your savior, Fang Yan said. You have to admit that if I did not save you today, you would not have the chance to open your eyes and see me. You would not have the right to breathe the air in this ward that is not considered fresh, let alone talk to me. Am I right? Yes. Tangqing's heart was extremely bitter. He owed Fang Yan a favor, a huge one. I beat up Chiba Haomu for you, right? Yes. Although I am not someone who expects others to repay favors, if Chiba Haomu does not recover, Wu Ren will definitely hold me responsible. If they hold me responsible, I will be in a lot of trouble. Of course, if your injuries are more serious than his, they will not have the right and face to trouble me. Tell me, how are you going to repay me for saving your life? If Chiba Haomu is in a coma for 1 day, I will be in a coma for 2 days. If Chiba Haomu is in a coma for half a year, I will be in a coma for half a year and a day, Tangqing said with a sad face. Fang Yan patted Tangqing's shoulder and said, as expected of my, Fang Yan's, student. When I first saw you, I felt that you are a good man who will never go back on your word. Chapter 89. Chiba Haomu did not stay in a coma for 3 to 5 days like Fang Yan had said. He woke up on the night of the accident. He opened his eyes and looked at the white ceiling with a dull expression. No one knew what he was thinking. Chiba Haomu sat beside Chiba Haomu, her beautiful eyes staring at him without blinking. Her face was calm and she did not appear particularly happy because he had woken up. Matsushima Ki and Saburo Fujino exchanged glances. Matsushima Ki then signaled Saburo with his eyes. Despite his reluctance, Saburo Fujino walked over to stand before Chiba Haomu and asked in a soft voice, "Student Chiba Haomu, do you feel better?" Chiba Haomu did not answer, as if he did not hear his teacher. Saburo Fujino turned to look at Matsushima Ki and continued, "If you feel any discomfort in your body, you must tell us immediately. We will find a doctor to check on you." Chiba Haomu still did not answer. Saburo Fujino quickly walked to Matsushima Ki and whispered, "Principal, Chiba Haomu's condition is not optimistic. Is there something wrong with his mind?" "Give him some time," Matsushima Ki said. She glanced at Chiba Haomu and said, "Teacher Fujino, let's go out first." "Okay," Saburo Fujino replied. Matsushima Ki patted Chiba Haomu's shoulder and said, "We'll leave Chiba Haomu to you." Chiba Haomu stood up and bowed deeply to Matsushima Ki. Matsushima Ki sighed and said, "Don't worry. We will take care of this." It was late at night and the corridor was empty. It was abnormally quiet. Saburo Fujino closed the door and said angrily, "Principal, Rosefinch is too much of a bully. How can a teacher participate in a competition between students? It is one thing for a teacher to participate, but he also beat up a student. We must seek justice for Chiba Haomu. Otherwise, Wuren Senior High School's reputation will be tarnished. How can we face our peers at Wuren Senior High School?" "Okay." Matsushima Ki nodded. "Then, Teacher Fujino will seek justice for Wu Ren." Principal Matsushima Ki. Saburo Fujino looked embarrassed. He was just an ordinary teacher in the delegation. He was not on the same level as Rosefinch Secondary. Only Matsushima Ki, the leader of the delegation, was qualified to negotiate with Rosefinch on behalf of Wu Ren. If he stepped forward, he would not have a legitimate reason to do so, and Rosefinch would not take him seriously. Matsushima Ki was in a bad mood. He also knew that it wasn't the time to be angry with his subordinates, so he explained, "I'm afraid this matter is a little troublesome." "What's so troublesome about it?" Saburo Fujino was unconvinced. However, the tone of his voice was clearly much lower. Fong Yan is Vermilion Bird's teacher. He severely injured Wu Ren's student in front of so many people. That's right, we'll let Chinya Haowu lie on the bed. We will not leave until they give us an apology, a satisfactory answer, and compensation sufficient to make up for our physical and emotional wounds. If it really doesn't work, we can make things worse. I want to see if they can withstand the pressure from society and the international community. It would be good if things were that simple. Matsushima Ki shook his head. Chiba Haowu violated the rules first, stabbing us in the back. They have something to use against us. That teacher surnamed Fong is too cunning. I fear that they are the ones who will not let this matter rest. Principal, you mean to say, not only will they not admit their mistake, they will also cause trouble for us. Based on your understanding of them, what do you think? Matsushima Ki asked. Saburo Fujino thought back to how he had interacted with Fong Yan and nodded with certainty. They will definitely do that. However, none of their team members were injured. What reason would they use to cause trouble for us? Some of our team members were injured. That is a fact that everyone knows. How do you know that none of their team members were injured? Chiba Haowu did not stab him at all. He was standing there perfectly fine, but he also fainted on the spot. That was a trick. Saburo Fujino was unable to continue. If they can trick, why can't Rosefinch do the same? Besides, what evidence do you have to prove that Rosefinch is cheating? Let's reconcile, Matsushima Ki said. Find a way to reconcile. What a humiliation. Saburo Fujino felt his chest aching again. Ever since they had inadvertently walked into Fong Yan's class 9, his chest had been aching ever since. I think the most humiliating thing is yet to come, Matsushima Ki said in a heavy tone. If we only lost our dignity, it would be a fortunate thing for us now. Chiba Haowu knew that Principal Matsushima Ki and Saburo Fujino were still standing in the corridor outside. Chiba Haowu's impulsive action had pushed the Wuren inspection team into a very unfavorable situation. They were probably having a headache over how to deal with the aftermath. She did not deliberately listen to the conversation outside. She looked at Chiba Haowu's dry lips and said, "You need to drink some water." Chiba Haowu did not respond. Chiba Haowu did not need his answer. She walked over and poured a cup of water for him. Then, she used a spoon to feed him. Chiba Haowu only swallowed. There was no expression on his face. "What do you want?" Chiba Haowu asked softly. "Is it just victory? If father knew what you did, he would definitely feel ashamed of your actions," Chiba Haowu said. Chiba Haowu finally reacted. A flash of sadness flashed across his eyes. Then, it was replaced by anger. He pointed at the door of the ward and said, "Get out." Chiba Haowu did not go out. She scooped another spoonful of water and fed it to Chiba Haowu. Then, she said, "Since you were young, the person you admired the most was father. Although you've never said it, I can see it in your eyes. You have talent and you work harder than anyone else. You want to catch up to him and even surpass him. No one will doubt this, even I firmly believe this. You will definitely be able to do it. You will become a better swordsman than father. I don't understand swords. I only understand tea. However, I believe that everything in this world is connected. If you don't wash your hands clean, then the tea you brew will definitely have a strange smell. It's the same with swordsmanship. If you don't wash your heart clean, then your swordsmanship will no longer be pure. Are you teaching me a lesson?" Chiba Haowu sneered. "Teaching your failed brother a lesson? Tell him how much of a failure he is. Some people can never reach the pinnacle of swordsmanship in their entire lives. Why? Because he is impatient for success. It's just like brewing tea. If the water isn't boiling, the tea will be green. If it's boiling for too long, the tea will be astringent. Little brother, I just want to tell you not to do inappropriate things at inappropriate times. You don't understand a swordsman's pursuit of the highest swordsmanship. You don't understand a swordsman's thirst for victory, Chiba Hawu said fiercely. You won't understand. I understand. How can I not understand? Chiba Hawu's voice was gentle and soft as if she would never be anxious. I also want to brew the best tea in the world. I also want to win. Who likes the feeling of failure? But I'm willing to wait. I believe that I can do it, and one day I will. So, I don't mind giving myself more time. What I'm pursuing is different from what you're pursuing, Chiba Hawu said. What I want is to win every match. I won't allow myself to fail. But you still lost. Chiba Hawu said. You should know that there's still a gap between you and your opponent. Even that swordsman named Tangqing can't compare to you in terms of composure and magnanimity, let alone that teacher who stopped you. Chiba Hawu closed his eyes in pain. Fang Yan, that demon-like existence. He was like a giant with infinite strength, while Chiba Hawu was only a short and ugly dwarf. He was completely powerless before him. Why? Chiba Hawu clenched the bedsheet tightly. Because he used too much force, the plain white bedsheet was twisted out of shape, and he tore a few holes in it. Why can he do it? Why can he do it? He really couldn't understand. Fang Yan didn't look much older than him. Why was he able to have such skills? Could it be that Japanese swordsmen really couldn't compare to Huaxia swordsmen? Or could it be that because Huaxia was the origin of martial arts, any random swordsman from Huaxia was an unbeatable monster? Chiba Hawu came from a famous kendo family, and was also a top-notch expert in the surrounding circle. Everyone who saw him was not stingy with their compliments. Everyone who fought with him said that his swordsmanship was amazing. Other than his father, who did not praise him, everyone said that his future was limitless. He was proud, but he was also impatient. He knew that his father didn't praise him because he wasn't good enough. He wanted to conquer everyone, including his father. During this trip to Huaxia, he first met Tangqing, a well-matched opponent, and then he met Fang Yan, a superhuman teacher. In the same class, there were already 2 people who could defeat him. Then, how many experts did Huaxia have? When he thought of the answer to this question, he felt a chill run down his spine. Chiba Hawu gently stroked Chiba Hawu's tightly furrowed brows, trying to calm them down a little. She said, if you have too many things on your mind, your hand that holds the sword will become heavier. Let go of your burdens and become a true swordsman. Win everyone's respect like your father. I don't care if I win people's respect. Chiba Hawu clutched his aching chest and said, I must defeat him. Only then can I wash away the humiliation I received today. Chapter 90. After some intense bargaining, Matsushima Maki, on behalf of the Wu-Ren investigation team, accepted the many requests of assistants from Rosefinch Senior High School. Finally, the matter was temporarily put to rest. According to the usual rules, when the investigation team finished their work and was ready to return home, Rosefinch Secondary would host a cocktail party to welcome them. At the same time, it was also a farewell party. At this time, not only would Vice Principal Lu Chaoga, who was in charge of the reception, be present, but Rosefinch Secondary's principal, Zhang Xiaofeng, and other senior leaders and board members would also attend the cocktail party. However, after this incident, how could the Wu-Ren investigation team still have the mood to attend such a banquet? They tried to reject it, but Rosefinch Secondary insisted. It was difficult to refuse such hospitality, so they could only put aside their worries and dress up to attend. Originally, Fong Yen was not qualified to attend this cocktail party. He was just an ordinary teacher at Rosefinch Secondary who had just been promoted from probation. He did not have any rank in the school. If a teacher like him could attend the cocktail party, they would probably have to prepare a hall that could accommodate hundreds of people. However, because he was one of the main receptionists for the Wu Ren investigation team, and the students from Class 9, led by him, had the upper hand in the competition with the Wu Ren investigation team, winning 3 out of 3 matches, even a leader like Li Ziqiang, who was extremely dissatisfied with Fong Yen, felt that he should invite Fong Yen over on such a day to reward him. In the past, most of the matches between Rosefinch and Wu Ren were evenly matched. Sometimes, they would even lose more than they won. They had never been suppressed like this, so much so that they could not even show their faces. Therefore, Fong Yen became the most relaxed person at the cocktail party. Everyone else was busy exchanging pleasantries and drinking, or saying goodbye reluctantly. Only Fong Yen was not loved by anyone. Those who were of a high enough rank were not willing to get close to him. Those who were not of a high enough rank were the students from the Wu Ren investigation team. They could not wait to surround Fong Yen and beat him up. Who would be willing to come up and drink with him? A person's loneliness was not loneliness. If you still felt lonely standing in the middle of a crowd, it meant that you were not popular. Fong Yen decided not to be a cheapskate anymore. Cheapskates have no friends. He sat alone in the corner of the hall, holding a glass of wine and thinking. "Sorry to disturb you," Chiba Kori said gently as she stood in front of Fong Yen. She didn't speak well in Hua-Xia, and Fong Yen didn't understand Japanese, so she could only speak in English. Fong Yen looked up at the beautiful Japanese girl and asked, "What's the matter?" "I'm here to apologize to you on behalf of Chiba Hamu," said Chiba Kori. "I know that there's a custom in Hua-Xia, to apologize with wine." She turned around and took a glass of red wine from the tray the waiter was holding and said, "I'll drink to apologize." She held the glass with both hands and drank the red wine in one gulp. Then, she put down the empty glass, took another glass of red wine, and drank it again. After 3 glasses, she wiped the wine off the corner of her mouth with a handkerchief. She looked at Fong Yen and said, "I hope you can accept Chiba Hamu's apology." "I don't accept it," said Fong Yen. Chiba Kaori looked at Fong Yen in surprise. She didn't understand what he meant. "First, we in Hua-Xia do have a custom of drinking to apologize, but it's mainly done among our colleagues and friends. Does Chiba Hamu think of us as friends? Second, we drink with white wine. A large glass of white wine. Is a sip of red wine an apology? This is your apology, not Chiba Hamu's apology. I believe that a guy who stabbed his opponent after a duel won't repent so easily, right? I think he hates me even more now. That's my guess. I don't care if you believe it or not, but I do. Of course, I have nothing to fear. If he dares to come, I'll just beat him up again." And the fourth. Actually, I only like to say 3 things because it sounds more complete. Adding a 4th thing feels a little out of place. Don't doubt that I'm a Virgo. You're not only here to drink to apologize, but also for something else, right? Chiba Kori's breathing quickened. Her eyes widened unnaturally as she stared at Fong Yen. Everyone in the investigation team said that Hua-Xia was treacherous and cunning, and it seemed to be true. His eyes were always smiling, as if there was nothing he didn't know. Fong Yen picked up the glass and took a sip of the juice. He looked up at Chiba Kaori and said, "So, what's your purpose? Fight? You can't beat me. Quarrel? You're not that kind of person, and neither am I. Threatening me before leaving doesn't seem to have any meaning." Fong Yen suddenly felt a little embarrassed. "Are you here to be friends with me? That must be it." One must know that women's desire to compare themselves with others was very strong. She lost to Chinitian in the tea ceremony, so she must be very angry. They were both proud and arrogant girls, so why was she stronger than them? Coincidentally, she heard rumors that Chinitian liked her, so she wanted to be the first to conquer her. That way, she would be able to surpass Chinitian. So what if you're good at making tea? So what if you have a strong aura? I still got the boy you like first. Fang Yan was very angry. What did they think he was? Hearing Fang Yan's words, Chiba Kaori became very embarrassed. She looked at Fang Yan and said, I just want to tell you on behalf of Chiba Haomu. He will definitely defeat you. He will defeat you fair and square. I like idiots who can't beat others but like to look forward to the future. It's as if he can't beat me now, but he can beat me in the future. Since he has this intention, I have no reason not to help him. Which ward is he staying in? I'll give him a chance to defeat me fair and square. He's a guest, so I can't let him leave with regrets. Sensei Fang Yan, I'm not talking about now. Chiba Kaori felt that she couldn't communicate with Fang Yan. What she meant was to give Chiba Haomu some confidence and more motivation. She would tell Chiba Haomu that she had already challenged Fang Yan on his behalf. Moreover, she would tell Chiba Haomu that she had predicted his victory in front of Fang Yan. Who said that the competition was going to start now? When is that? Fang Yan asked. When Chiba Haomu steps on Huaxia's soil again. Chiba Kaori said. She knew that if Chiba Haomu didn't have the confidence to defeat Fang Yan, he probably wouldn't step on Huaxia's soil again. Fang Yan shook his head and said, it seems that the initiative is in Chiba Haomu's hands. If he can't beat me and hides in some Japanese village, where will I go to find him? You are insulting a swordsman's desire to win, Chiba Kaori said. I'm short-sighted. Why don't I go and let him beat me up now? Not far away, Vice Headmaster Matsushima Ki, who was drinking and chatting with Lu Chaoga, saw Fang Yan and Chiba Kaori in the corner. He immediately frowned and whispered to Saburo Fujino, who was beside him, Chiba Kaori and Fang Yan are together. Hurry up and go take a look. Don't let Chiba Kaori get bullied. Seeing that, Saburo Fujino was greatly shocked and he quickly moved toward the two of them. Fire, theft, and Fang Yan. This was the consensus of the Wu Ren inspection team. This is an unforgettable trip for me. Matsushima Ki stood on the tea stage and gave a speech. This was the usual procedure of a cocktail party. She looked at the crowd below the stage with a solemn expression and said, I have led groups to over 20 countries and participated in nearly 100 exchange and inspection activities. However, none of them have been as shocking and thought-provoking as this one. Yes, I have been reflecting on it for the past few days. I have been reflecting on our mentality, our attitude, and more importantly, what is Wu Ren lacking? Wu Ren is a top-notch school in Japan, and its students are all favored by the heavens. Thus, be it Wu Ren's teachers or students, we are filled with pride and a sense of accomplishment. Pride is not wrong, and achievement is not wrong, but the mistake is that while we maintain our pride, we lose the modesty and respect for our friends. Not only are we outstanding, our friends are also outstanding. Rosefinch Secondary has proven this point with its 3 victories. The culture of the Tang dynasty is in Japan. Many people say that. Sometimes, even I feel proud of it. I thought that it was us, Japan, who had preserved and developed the culture of the Tang dynasty in Huaxia. We have a heart that cherishes and passes down our traditional culture. However, this time, I found out that it is not the case. We package our culture and display its essence to the world. However, this culture has been integrated into the lives of the people of Huaxia. This is too common for them. However, when there is a challenge, when the country needs it, countless outstanding people will step forward, to fight for dignity, to fight for victory. We have witnessed all of this with our own eyes. We have lost. We have lost our dignity, Matsushima Keith said with incomparable honesty. We have also won. Me, my students, and every member of our Wu-Ren inspection team, we have learned to reflect. We have a humble and unyielding determination. I believe in my students. I believe in my colleagues. I will bring back the defeat of these 3 matches as the greatest gift. The applause was thunderous. Sitting on the plane to Japan, all the members of the Wu-Ren inspection team heaved a sigh of relief. Huaxia is too scary, someone said. That's right. Chiba Haomu is invincible, but he was defeated by them. Any random teacher is so powerful. Is their school full of such masters? Chapter 91. The happiest person was Tangqing when the Wu-Ren investigation team left. He jumped up from the bed excitedly and said, "They really left. Chinya Haowu left too." They left. Chinitian sat on the chair and was peeling an apple in her hand. Her movements were very skillful, and the whole piece of apple skin became a piece. It looked very beautiful as it hung in the air. That's great. If Chinya Haowu is fine, I won't have to lie in bed for half a year, Tangqing said happily. He had been worrying about this matter for the whole day yesterday. If Chinya Haowu really stayed in Huaxia and didn't leave, then his life would be ruined. He did not want to spend his youth lying in bed in a vegetative state. He did not expect that in just one day, Chinya Haowu would return to the country, and Chinitian, whom he could not forget, would take the initiative to visit him. Was there anything more blissful than this? Half a year. Chinitian raised his eyebrows and quickly understood. Fang Yan asked you to do it. Fang Yan sensei was worried that they would go back on their word, so you guys decided to go back on your word first. I did not. Tangqing quickly explained. He was worried that Chinitian would think that he was a dishonest boy who liked to play tricks. He said, Sensei Fang Yan asked me to do it. He saved me. I had to do it. Fighting poison with poison is indeed a good idea, Chinitian said. At least, this is the best way to deal with those who do not keep their word. Tangqing felt a little upset in his heart. Why was Chinitian always praising Fang Yan's teacher when it came to him? She was not a girl who liked to praise others. He wanted to ask what the relationship between Chinitian and Fang Yan was, but he could not bring himself to ask. It was rare for them to be so harmonious, and he did not want to ruin the atmosphere at this moment. Pack! After peeling the apple, the peel fell into the trash can on the ground. Tangqing said pitifully, be careful not to cut your hand. If I want to eat it, I can do it myself, Ka-chow. Chinitian took a bite of the apple and chewed on the crisp and sweet flesh. He looked at Tangqing and asked, what did you say? Tangqing swallowed his saliva and said, I say, this apple tastes good, right? Dong dong, there was a knock on the door. Tangqing shouted, please come in. 2 girls in Rosefinch's uniform stood at the door with a bouquet in their hands. Their faces were red as they said, Student Tangqing, we heard that you were injured, so we came to see you. When they saw Chinitian sitting in front of the window in the ward, they hurriedly greeted Chinitian and said, Senior Sister Etienne is here too. This was already the 20th batch of girls who had come to visit Tangqing in the past 2 days. Some came alone, some came in groups, and some came in groups. Tangqing, the most handsome boy in Rosefinch, was indeed very charming. This time, after he seriously injured a kendo master sent by Japan, his reputation was pushed to an unprecedented height. They sent flowers, apples, and all kinds of gifts. The apple that Chinitian ate was given by them. Chinitian smiled and nodded at them. He stood up from the chair and said to Tangqing, I still have something to do, so I'll leave you in the care of my junior sisters. Gotcha, she took another bite of the apple. What are you going to do? Tangqing asked hurriedly. He hoped that Qin would stay and take care of him the most. No, it was fine for him to take care of Qin. Qin thought about it and said, I'm going to sleep. I seem a little sleepy. Senior sister Etienne, take care. The two girls standing at the door greeted her respectfully. It wasn't until Qin figure was far away that they felt the suffocating feeling disappear. Classmate Tangqing, are you okay? The girls laughed and surrounded him. Sorry. Tangqing looked at them and said, Can you peel an apple for me? Of course, no problem, the girls said happily. After all, not everyone had the opportunity to peel an apple for the most handsome boy in school. As soon as Fang Yan appeared at the door of Lu Chaoga's office, the secretary, Xiao Meng, who was sitting at the front desk, exclaimed, Ah, Fang Yan. As soon as she shouted, the people in the surrounding offices all craned their heads to look over. He's Fang Yan. He looks so young. He knows martial arts. He doesn't look like it, but he's quite handsome. It's my favorite dish. He's the one who beat up the Japanese, like that. I heard that person is very powerful in Japan. After 2 days of adaptation, Fang Yan was already used to this kind of discussion. If the exchange competition with the Wuren investigation team caused Tangqing's popularity to soar, then Fang Yan really became famous after this battle. Not only did he save Tangqing at the critical moment, he even beat up Qin Haowu in front of everyone, causing everyone's eyes to pop out of their sockets. Now, the students of Class 9 walked on campus with their heads held high. Regardless of whether people asked, they would take the initiative to say, Don't mess with me, our teacher knows martial arts. Fang Yan, this teacher who had just come to Rosefinch Secondary for a short period of time, had refreshed people's understanding of him and his own limits time and time again. Fang Yan waved his hand at everyone and said, Go back. Everyone, go back. I'm just an ordinary person. It's enough to watch for a few minutes. Don't let it affect your work. You're not ordinary at all, Xiao Meng said with a red face. I saw it with my own eyes. You're amazing. Xiao Meng was Lu Chaoga's secretary. After Jingjing was not welcomed by Lu Chaoga would bring Xiao Meng wherever she went. When Fang Yan beat up Chiba Haowu, Xiao Meng was also one of the bystanders. However, there were too many people watching at that time, and her boss was also beside her. Even though she felt that her heart was about to jump out of her chest, she could not take the initiative to express her admiration to Fang Yan. Don't tell anyone. I'm a very low-key person, Fang Yan said with a smile. Is Principal Lu in his office? Yes. Principal Lu is waiting for you in his office. He said that you can go straight in when you arrive. Xiao Meng's eyes were filled with affection. She looked at Fang Yan and said, Mr. Fang, Transformers is on. Can I treat you to a movie? I don't watch cartoons, Fang Yan said. It's not cartoons, it's... Before Xiao Meng finished speaking, Fang Yan had already pushed the door and walked into Lu Chaoga's office. He ran so fast. Xiao Meng's eyes were full of little stars. No wonder he is so good at fighting. Lu Chaoga was looking at a file. This was Fang Yan's file. The file was very simple, so simple that people felt it was not simple. Lu Chaoga knew that either there was a problem with this file, or there was a problem with Fang Yan. Or, there was a problem with both of them. She also heard Xiao Meng shouting outside the office. She knew that Fang Yan was now the hottest celebrity in the entire Rosefinch Secondary. Even Tangqing, the most popular guy in Rosefinch, was not as famous as him. Who asked him to be saved by Fang Yan? Moreover, a teacher, in order to avenge his own student, actually beat up a student from the inspection team in front of so many people. Which student wouldn't like such a protective teacher? Now, Fong Yan had already become the guardian angel in the mouth of many students. As Rosefinch's students boasted to the outside world, the entire student community in Huaqing now knew that Rosefinch had a teacher who knew Kung Fu. Lu Chaoge smiled bitterly. She really didn't know whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. Seeing Fong Yan push the door open and come in, Lu Chaoge said, "Sit down." She took out her tea can from her drawer and pushed it over, saying, "If you want tea, make it yourself." Fong Yan didn't sit down. He looked at Lu Chaoge with a strange expression and said, "Principal Lu, don't be so nice to me. Once you're nice to me, I feel that this is the last conversation we'll have. You want to expel me again, right? If you don't want to drink, then forget it." Lu Chaoge reached out to take the tea can back. "Drink." Fong Yan quickly reached out and not only grabbed the tea can, but he also grabbed Lu Chaoge's hand. Lu Chaoge's ears were slightly red, and she looked at Fong Yan with a sharp gaze. What she meant was, "Hurry up and let go of my hand." Fong Yan didn't seem to feel the murderous intent in Lu Chaoge's eyes and said, "If you let go of the tea can, I'll let go." Lu Chaoge was so angry that she almost laughed. "You're holding my hand, how do you expect me to let go of the tea can?" "Let go," Lu Chaoge said in a low voice. "If you promise." Fong Yan originally wanted to insist, but seeing that Lu Chaoge's expression wasn't right, he quickly let go. "Whether you promise or not, I'll let go." Lu Chaoge put the tea can in front of Fong Yan, but she didn't take it back. She looked up and down at Fong Yan, and after a serious look, she asked, "Fong Yan, what else are you hiding from me?" "Too much." Fong Yan said very frankly. "My parents' hobbies, first love's name, 3 measurements, and so on." "I didn't tell you." "I don't need to know these things." Lu Chaoge wanted to get angry again. "I know. That's why I didn't tell you." Lu Chaoge stared at Fong Yan with a sharp gaze, and said, "You know how to arrange flowers, know calligraphy, have a deep literary foundation, have a great-grandfather, and have profound kung fu. Fong Yan, who are you? Why did you come to Rosefinch?" "Others don't know why I came to Rosefinch, but don't you know?" Fong Yan asked aloud. Lu Chaoge's heartbeat sped up for no reason, and she said expressionlessly, "How would I know why you came?" She was worried that Fong Yan would say something messy, and faintly, worried that he wouldn't say those words. "For the inheritance." Fong Yan said in a deep voice. "I want to teach them how to arrange flowers, I want to teach them calligraphy, I want them to appreciate the glory of Chinese culture, I want them to not be bullied." Spider-Man said that the greater a person's ability, the more responsibility he has. "I want to follow his example and contribute what I have learned to the country, to society, and to my students. Yes, I'm such a person. A person who is simple but not simple, ordinary but not ordinary. Tell me the truth." Lu Chaoge shouted angrily. "I'm afraid. You don't know, that woman hits people too hard. I'm scared of her." Fong Yan said with a sad face, feeling wronged. Chapter 92. The first time I met her, she beat me so hard that I couldn't get out of bed for more than 10 days. The second time, she broke my leg. The third time, she knocked out 2 of my front teeth. Even now, people still call me a toothless rabbit. Tell me, how can there be such a violent woman in this world? Is she still a woman? Can I not run away? If I don't run away, who knows what she will do to me this time? What if she blinds my eyes? What if she knocks my nose in? She has done that before. Which part of my face is the ugliest? My nose. My nose was so handsome and straight, but after 2 punches from her, it became like this. People who don't know me might think I was born like this. Fong Yan's history of growing up was the history of Yi Ro's brutal violence against him. Thinking of the grievances and wounds on his body, he had the urge to burst into tears. Why is my life so bitter? Fong Yan looked at Lu Chaoga, who was sitting across from him. She was expressionless, and there was no sympathy in her eyes. Don't you think I'm pitiful? Fong Yan asked curiously. Shouldn't she be hugging him and crying bitterly when he said it so miserably? This woman is so heartless. Do you think I'll believe you? Lu Chaoga said with a sneer. Fong Yan opened his eyes wide. In all honesty, every word he said this time was the truth. How can you not believe me? 2 days ago, you seriously injured a swordsman from Japan and sent him to the hospital. What kind of woman can beat you? Lu Chaoga asked sarcastically. Bastard, does he think I'm an idiot? There is someone more powerful than me. Fong Yan wanted to explain. He regretted that he didn't ask someone to record the video when Yi Ro beat him. Otherwise, the evidence would be irrefutable. Fong Yan. Lu Chaoga interrupted Fong Yan. I want to hear the truth from you. If you really don't want to talk about it, you can tell me directly. I won't force you. I can't force you. But, you don't have to make up such a vulgar story to deal with it. Be honest. Fong Yan's eyes reddened. Wait until you want to talk about it. Lu Xiaoge waved his hand disinterestedly and said, no matter where you come from or what your purpose is, as long as you do it for the good of the students and the school, I will still support you in your work as I have in the past. This time, Class 9's performance is very good, the school should reward you. What do you think? Can you give me a raise? Fong Yan put away his depressed mood and said to fight for the benefits that should belong to him. Impossible, Lu Chaoga said. You've just been promoted from an internship to an official teacher. This is already against the rules. It's impossible for me to get a raise in the near future. Lu Chaoga frowned and asked, are you short of money? Not really. It's just that I'm afraid of being poor and want to save some money to protect myself, Fong Yan said. He still had another thought that he didn't say. He was getting more and more famous in Rosefinch and among the students in Huaqing. What if Yi Gentle found his whereabouts and chased after him? He would have to run away again. Doesn't he need money to run away? If there's a critical moment and you need money urgently, you can ask me for help, Lu Chaoga said. This was a promise. After saying that, Lu Chaoga was inexplicably angry in her heart. Why can't I avoid the topic of money every time I'm with this guy? Shouldn't educated people be ashamed to talk about money? Thank you, Principal Lu. I knew we're on the same side. Fong Yan was overjoyed. What's the best way to test the friendship between friends these days? Borrow money. No matter how much it is, if someone is willing to lend money to you, it means they treat you as an important friend. According to previous practice, the school can allocate a portion of the funds for you to go on a trip. Lu Chaoga said. That's fine. Fong Yan nodded with a smile. Take the students on a sightseeing tour, feel the beauty of nature, and at the same time deepen the relationship between them. This is a good idea. The school is indeed more meticulous and long-term than I am. I'm always thinking about whether I can get a raise or not. The teacher leading the team needs to be the homeroom teacher, Lu Chaoga said. The smile on Fong Yan's face froze. What does this mean? They allocated funds for the students to go on a trip, but they kicked me, the hero, away. Chen Dehai picked up a big bargain. How can they play people like this? Lu Chaoga saw Fong Yan's reaction and laughed in her heart. Kid, I don't believe I can't teach you a lesson. She took out a piece of paper from the folder in front of her and handed it over. She said, "From today onwards, you are the homeroom teacher of Class 9. I'll hand over Class 9 to you." Fong Yan grinned and said, "I knew the school leaders wouldn't let us, the teachers who work wholeheartedly, feel wronged. Sure enough, isn't the reward coming?" Fong Yan. Lu Chaoge looked at Fong Yan seriously and said, "The homeroom teacher is different from the teacher. The teacher only needs to be responsible for the subject he teaches and ensure the student's academic performance. But the homeroom teacher is not the same. He not only needs to be responsible for the student's academic performance, but also the students' lives. Whether the students come to class, why they don't come to class, what is the reason for the students' declining performance, what is the reason for the students' improvement performance, if the students have conflicts in school, if the students have conflicts outside, they also need to find a way to solve it. The homeroom teacher is not the students' parents, but they are better than the students' parents. This position has a great responsibility." "I understand." Fong Yan nodded and said. "On the first day I came to Rosefinch, I told Principal Liu that I want to dedicate my youth, talent, and body. Where there is light, there is warmth." That was not a joke. "Fong Yan, don't say such unrealistic things." Lu Chaoge interrupted Fong Yan's words. "No one wants you to dedicate your youth and body. You just need to be serious and diligent, and that will be enough to become an excellent homeroom teacher. I helped you get the position of homeroom teacher of Class 9 to reward you for your excellent performance in receiving the Warren inspection team. Also, I have something I want you to do." "What is it?" "Pilot," Lu Chaoge said. "Pilot of Chinese studies." "What do you mean?" Fong Yan did not understand. "Learn Farewell to Cambridge Again on Sparrow Bridge and Rainy Alley in Rainy Alley. Enrich the students' knowledge of ancient literature in class and cultivate their interests and hobbies, such as the tea ceremony, calligraphy, and of course, martial arts. Actually, you are already doing it. But I hope to make it more systematic. If Class 9 is successful, I will consider promoting it to the whole school," Lu Chaoge said. She looked at Fong Yan and said, "You are the most suitable candidate. Aren't you afraid that I will lead the students of Class 9 astray?" Fong Yan said with a smile. "You have to know that it is still the fractional theory. If I bring them to learn these things all day, what if their scores fall behind? Who says that those who know the tea ceremony and calligraphy can't get high scores? Such people are more open-minded and better at thinking. I believe that they will be able to get better scores." Lu Chaoge looked at Fong Yan and said, "Of course, this is your responsibility. I hope that the students of Class 9 can be good at the tea ceremony and calligraphy, and they can also get good scores. This is the real reason why I am wholeheartedly promoting Rosefinch's education reform. You ask me to do so much, but you don't give me a raise, Fong Yan, but I am still willing to do these things for you." Fong Yan said with a smile, "What you think is also what I think. What you want to do is also what I want to do. I hope that they can write beautiful words and make beautiful poems. I hope that they can make delicious tea and practice sharp swords. The wisdom of the youth is the wisdom of the country, and the strength of the youth is the strength of the country. If every student is like me, who would dare to provoke us?" "I will accept this task," Fong Yan said heroically. "I will definitely give you a reborn Class 9, a Class 9 that will make everyone look at it in a new light." "Let's wait and see," Lu Chaoge said. "Principal Liu is busy, so I won't bother you." As Fong Yan spoke, he picked up the can of tea on the desk and said, "Principal Liu, you don't need to send me off. I can go out by myself." Lu Chaoge opened her mouth and wanted to shout, but in the end, she just shook her head and smiled bitterly. As soon as the office door was closed, the phone on the desk rang. Lu Chaoge glanced at the caller ID, hesitated for a moment, and finally pressed the answer button. "What's the matter?" Lu Chaoga asked coldly. "I am at the school gate." A man's hearty voice came from the phone, as if he didn't hear the indifference in Lu Chaoga's tone at all, and said, "Mom asked me to pick you up for dinner when I get off work." "I still have work to do," Lu Chaoga said. "I will wait for you at the gate," the man said. "It may take a long time." After hanging up the phone, Lu Chaoga was a little upset. She pulled out the jade guanine from her chest and gently rubbed it with her hand. A cool feeling poured into her palm, and her mood gradually calmed down. Whenever she was unhappy, this jade guanine could bring her comfort that ordinary people couldn't understand. This kind of life. When will it end? She sighed, and there was a heart-palpitating coldness in her eyes. Chapter 93. It was good to be at home, but it was hard to eat outside. Since moving out of Jiang Qin's house, Fang Yan had a hard time eating delicious food. The food in the school cafeteria was really not good, and the money in Fang Yan's pocket could hardly support him to go to the restaurant in front of the school every day to improve his life. What's more, he didn't have the guts to spend all the money at once. He had to save a certain amount of money so that he could run away again at any time. Therefore, even if he was a little afraid of his grandfather, Lu Gong, he still liked to go to his house to eat when he had nothing to do. Lu Gong had a small appetite, so he put down his bowl and chopsticks first. He looked at Fang Yan, who was eating happily, and said, "Come to the study after eating." Fang Yan raised his head in confusion, but his grandfather had already left his seat. His grandmother slammed the chopsticks on the table and said angrily, "You old man, why did you ask Fang Yan to go to your study again? I'm warning you, if you scold Fang Yan and drive him away, I won't let you off." Fang Yan quickly comforted his grandmother and said, "Grandma, don't be angry. Who said that Grandpa asked me to go to the study to scold me? Maybe he was praising me. How can I not know his character? If he praised you, he would have said it in front of me. Why would he need to pull you to the study?" His grandmother knew her husband's character very well, so she said angrily, "That's not for sure. Grandpa has been urging me to read books recently. Maybe he asked me to go to the study to check how well I'm reading. You're already a teacher. What's there to test? My grandson is well educated." In his grandmother's eyes, her child was the embodiment of perfection, without any flaws. The sea of books is boundless. Even Grandpa doesn't dare to say that he's learned enough. What's the point of my knowledge? Fang Yan said with a smile. He quickly finished the bowl of millet porridge in the bowl, and half a steamed bun on the plate. He said, "Grandma, I'll go upstairs to have a look." "Go. Be careful. If that old man scolds you, you can come downstairs to Grandma," Grandma said worriedly. "Grandma, don't worry. Grandfather won't make things difficult for me," Fang Yan said with a smile. When Fang Yan walked into the study, his grandfather was standing in front of the table writing. Every day, he would write for 2 hours, an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening. It was also because of his decades of hard work that his calligraphy reached the pinnacle and formed a style of its own. The outside world called it iron bone calligraphy. It meant that his handwriting was as solid as steel, and every stroke seemed to be carved with an awl. Her grandfather rarely wrote for others, so there were very few calligraphy treasures that had been circulated outside. However, in the black market, each word could be sold for a sky-high price of hundreds of thousands to millions of words. Grandpa was one of the few calligraphers in Huaxia who valued their works according to their calligraphy. Even some of the top international masters still valued their works according to the ruler. It couldn't be helped. Hu asked the former prime minister to personally ask him for his calligraphy and said, "If you get an iron bone calligraphy, it can be a family heirloom." Therefore, after Du Qing got his grandfather's calligraphy, he cherished it. He personally visited his grandfather to give him a brush fee, which was also to express his gratitude and the importance he attached to this matter. Yichu, on the white Xian paper, these two big characters were written neatly. Grandpa's brush was very heavy. At first glance, it seemed that the ink had soaked the thin Xian paper and burned two big holes. However, when you picked up the Xian paper, you would find that the two characters were intact. The characters were still on the paper, and the paper was still intact. The brush was heavy, and the brush was light. Grandpa's grasp of strength tended to be perfect. Seeing his grandfather put down the brush, Fang Yan quickly handed him a clean towel and praised loudly, "Good calligraphy." The strength penetrated the back of the paper, making it hard for me to breathe. You won't be able to breathe. Lu Gong didn't respond to Fang Yan's words. Even when Fang Yan deliberately made a low-level mistake while praising, he pretended not to hear it. "You're very famous in Rosefinch." Fang Yan chuckled and said, "What did Grandpa hear? You used your family's martial arts to seriously injure someone and send him to the hospital. What do you think I heard?" Lu Gong stared at Fang Yan sternly and said, "What did you promise me back then?" "I said that I wouldn't easily use force." "Grandpa, you don't know what happened that day. If you knew, you would also beat that Japanese up," Fang Yan explained. Lu Gong stared at Fang Yan for a while, then nodded and said, "That's true." Ugh. Fang Yan felt that the old man was a little strange today. He was stubborn and stubborn. Once he made up his mind, even 9 bulls couldn't pull him back. When did he become so easy to talk to? "Grandpa, are you okay?" Fang Yan asked carefully. "What can happen to me?" Lu Gong said with a straight face. "You're not angry." "Why would I be angry? I hit someone. Chowga has already explained the cause of the incident to me. Otherwise, do you think I would let it go easily?" Lu Gong said with a cold snort. "Chowga? Headmaster Lu." Fang Yan looked at Lu Gong thoughtfully and said, "Are you familiar with her? Who do you think invited Chowga back?" A rare smile appeared on Lu Gong's face. Obviously, this was something that made him very proud. "You invited Lu Chowga back? Brat, you have no respect for your elders. You have to call me Headmaster Lu." Lu Gong scolded. Fang Yan thought that Lu Chowga was only a few years older than him, so why couldn't he call her Lu Chowga? There was a reason for this incident, so I won't pursue it. But have you thought about it? You're so famous now, and you've exposed your skills. Don't tell me the Yi family didn't notice. Your mother called several times to ask about it, and your grandmother covered it up. You running away from home is such a big thing. Don't tell me they really didn't investigate. Do you think they really don't know you're in watching?" Fang Yan's heart was a little cold. He said, "I also thought about it. Knowing is one thing. But, I've already run away. They don't have to come and drag me back, do they? I'm so disappointed. Why would they drag you back?" Lu Gong said. "Revenge breeds revenge, when will it end? What era is it now? Is it still fashionable to fight and kill? Fang Yan, I'm very happy that you came to Flower City to look for me." Since the path of martial arts was blocked, he would continue on the path of teaching and educating people. As long as you can settle down, I believe that you will also achieve extraordinary results. "Grandpa, what have I become in my teacher's line of work?" He's still a teacher. Coming out of his grandfather's villa, Fang Yan felt a little depressed. It was as if Yi Ro would suddenly jump out from the grass on the side of the road and say, "Fang Yan, guess who I am?" Then she would rush up and beat him up. Not only did Yi Ro make him nervous, but also the expectation of his family was a heavy pressure. He ran away from home. His father, who had high hopes for him, must be very disappointed. Grandpa, who was paralyzed in bed, must have suffered a huge blow, right? And that old drunkard. He must have gulped down a few mouthfuls of burning knife and cursed, "You're useless, right?" It wasn't that Fong Yen didn't work hard. On the contrary, he worked even harder than everyone else. The more he wanted to prove himself, the more he couldn't prove himself. Since he had comprehended the Tai Chi realm, the Fong family had regarded it as the hope of revitalizing the family. However, in the past 2 years, the more anxious he was, the more stagnated he became in the Tai Chi realm. In the end, the Tai Chi heart, which had been rotating slowly, stopped moving. It became a stillborn baby. Fong Yen was frightened. He knew that once he fought with Yi Ro, the secret of the Tai Chi realm would be exposed. That woman was not only skilled in martial arts, but also had a good eye. So he ran away. Just like a coward. However, he was the successor of Fong's Tai Chi realm. He could escape for a while, but could he escape for the rest of his life? Fong Yen thought of the sudden reaction of the Tai Chi heart again in his grandfather's study. At that time, his grandfather pointed out his heart and said that he lacked a kind of spirit. Everyone needed a spirit, and they also needed to have their own pursuits. What was his pursuit? He deliberately pursued to improve his martial arts, but he got the opposite result. Instead of making progress, he was retreating. The Tao was natural. If it was not natural, how could he feel the infinite Tao? At that moment, he felt as if he had been enlightened. Fong Yen knew that his escape this time was the right choice. Because he might have found another way to say goodbye. Although that way was full of thorns and weeds, and he did not know where to go, he knew that there must be a way. When I leave Rosefinch, it will be the day I reach the Tai Chi realm, Fong Yen said to himself. There was no wind or moon, and the air was dry and hot. Fong Yen was lost in his thoughts as he walked towards the courtyard he was staying in. His grandfather lived in the easternmost courtyard, and the one that belonged to Lu Chaoga, where Fong Yen lived, was the westernmost one. When he passed by the Yangong Causeway, he heard a low shout. Stop, all of you stop. Xingguodong, you hooligan, Xingguodong. These 3 words were like the key to activating the password. Fong Yen immediately retracted his thoughts. He glanced around and immediately ran toward the bank of Sparrow River. The scene in front of him caused his eyes to crack and his anger to boil. Under the reflection of the clear river, Fong Yen saw that Xingguodong and Li Yang were blocking a girl, one on the left and one on the right, not letting her leave. The girl had her arms crossed in front of her chest and was resisting with all her might. The girl cursed, but this did not dispel Xingguodong and Li Yang's enthusiasm. The 2 of them laughed and tangled with each other. They had no intention of letting go of this little sheep. Scum, Fong Yen cursed. He immediately took out his phone from his pocket. Chapter 94. If Fong Yen didn't talk to Zhu Jian in advance and saw this shameful scene, he might directly rush up and slap Xingguodong and Li Yang 300 times, and then drag them out to see the school leaders to give them a heavy punishment. They didn't want to be good students, but learned to be hooligans. Which hooligan had a good ending? However, he already knew the real reason why his predecessor, Zhu Jian, was expelled from the school. Naturally, he couldn't repeat the same mistake. Therefore, he had to guard against Xingguodong and Li Yang. Fong Yen turned on the video function of his mobile phone, but the crime scene was dark. There was no usable image on the mobile phone. It didn't matter if there was no image, as long as there was sound. With sound, at least Fong Yen could prove himself clearly. No matter how the subsequent plot developed, Fong Yen could be in an invincible position. Fong Yen felt that he was really 2F*King smart. Fong Yen. You bastard, you beast. Don't come over, don't come over. The girl suddenly raised her voice and shouted. Fong Yan's expression froze, and the mobile phone in his hand almost fell to the ground. What was going on? What made him vomit blood was that Jing Guodong and Li Yang, who were trying to take off the girl's clothes like hooligans, turned into the embodiment of justice and the messenger of purity. Jing Guodong blocked the girl with his body and shouted, Fong Yan, don't come over. I'm telling you, as long as I, Jing Guodong, am here, you can't hurt Su Xia, Su Xia. Who is Su Xia? Fong Yan felt very wronged. He didn't know her at all. Li Yang became more arrogant. He didn't know when a wooden stick appeared in his hand. He waved the wooden stick in his hand in the air and shouted, Fong Yan, don't think that you can do evil just because you are good at martial arts. I'm telling you, unless I, Li Yang, die and you step over my dead body. Otherwise, don't think about hurting my girlfriend. Su Xia is Li Yang's girlfriend. Fong Yan understood. This was a trap that saw him as the prey. Their target was him. They wanted to ruin his reputation and expel him from the school. It's fine if you don't move, but if you do, you'll hurt others. Fong Yan slipped his phone into his pocket. There was no point in continuing to take photos. All that was left was his criminal record. No, a pending criminal record. There were victims, witnesses, and they would find a way to get physical evidence. Only 2 of the 3 fops were present. The other one, Chen Tao, must be lying in ambush not far away. Fong Yan was furious. He hated being wronged in such a humiliating way. He could imagine that if this matter were to blow up, there would be no place for him in Rosefinch Secondary. No matter what the truth was, it was difficult for him to stand on the podium with such a scandal on his back. Fong Yan smiled. He was amused by these fellows. Last time, they were really up to no good and were discovered by Zhu Jian, who was passing by. Then, they beat them at their own game. When Zhu Jian was busy protecting the girl from harm, they took a photo of the girl wearing Zhu Jian's jacket and the 2 of them hugging each other. Then, they kicked the girl and Zhu Jian out of the school together. This time, they were smarter. They designed a set of wolf trapping techniques specifically to deal with Fong Yan. Fong Yan, aren't you good at fighting? We won't clash with you directly, but we will think of a way to ruin your reputation. It was not hard to imagine that Fong Yan would be seen by someone with ulterior motives when he went to his grandfather's house for dinner tonight. They immediately discussed setting up a trap. When Fong Yan walked out of his grandfather's house, the show would officially begin. They knew that no teacher would be indifferent when faced with such a situation. Moreover, the culprits were Jing Guodong and Li Yang. They also knew that there was no moon or stars tonight. The sky was pitch black, and it was hard to see one's fingers in the forest by the Rosefinch River. It was difficult to use mobile phones and other video equipment. Even if you recorded it, it would be all insulting and attacking Fong Yan. If Fong Yan used it as evidence, wouldn't he be sent to prison? What kind of crime was it for a teacher to molest a student? There was no need to ask. I've always thought that all of you have accomplished nothing. You're just a bunch of good-for-nothings who have nothing better to do, Fong Yan said with a smile. But at this moment, I have to apologize to you. You are much better than I thought. Who the F***ck are you talking about? Li Yang opened his mouth and wanted to curse. Fong Yan's words were too harsh. His little heart couldn't take it. Jing Guodong grabbed his arm and shook his head at him, signaling him not to be impulsive and to proceed according to the script they had arranged. Look at this idea, look at this setup, look at this acting. You look like professional actors. No, 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 even some professional actors are not as professional as you. You must have put in a lot of effort, right? Fang Yan, what are you talking about? So what if you are a teacher? Can a teacher molest a female student? Do you have any humanity? Do you have any shame? Jing Guodong was very immersed in the role, pointing at Fang Yan and scolding. It's a pity that you are not bad guys. Fang Yan said. What makes me happy is that you chose the right way to say goodbye. Being 1099% bad guy. Very good, you have a clear sense of yourself. You didn't go the wrong way. You are the bad guy. 1010% bad guy. Fang Yan, go away. If you dare to touch my girlfriend, I will fight you. The girl hiding behind Jing Guodong and Li Yang also scolded, Fang Yan, I can't believe that you are a teacher on the surface, but do such a thing behind my back. If Jing Guodong and Li Yang didn't come in time, I would have been, by you. 55555. To be honest, Fang Yan was in a very tricky situation. Because, no matter what he said, others could say that he was quibbling. Zhu Jian was unlucky, but at least the victim was firmly on his side. The victim helped Zhu Jian, so even if Zhu Jian was expelled from school, he would only be cursed for having an affair with a female student. Fang Yan was unlucky that even the victim stood on the opposite side and accused him of trying to molest her. If the police believed that the evidence was conclusive, Fang Yan would be committing a crime. Therefore, the methods that Jing Guodong and the others played on Fang Yan were much more dirty and vicious than the methods that they used on Zhu Jian, who asked Fang Yan to bully them. Naturally, they hated Fang Yan more than they hated Zhu Jian. Fang Yan looked at the performance of the three people in front of him and asked, Who is Su Xia? Fang Yan, stop pretending. Su Xia is my girlfriend, the great beauty of our rosefinch. Don't you know? If you don't know, why did you follow her to this place? Do you think you can shirk your responsibility like this? We will definitely report to the school and make them expel a dirty teacher like you. You are the scum of the teachers. Why do these lines sound so familiar? Fang Yan thought about it seriously and finally understood. These words were originally said to Jing Guodong, Li Yang, and Qin Tao. He didn't expect that these three scumbags would successfully counterattack, and now they could openly return these words to Fang Yan without changing a single word. From this aspect, Fang Yan was indeed a very successful teacher. Do you think that I will be unlucky just because you found a woman to be your accomplice? Fang Yan said with a sneer. Did I touch her? Who saw me touch her? I was a few meters away from her. Don't you think your acting is too much? Do you think that by recording your voices of scolding me, it will prove the fact that I tried to molest that person? Don't you think it's too simple? Also, the sky is so dark. I'm afraid that Qin Tao's phone can't record this scene, right? Could it be that he has more advanced equipment? In order to put on this big show, to drive me out of the school, to send me to prison, are you willing to pay a lot of money? Okay, the show is over. Fang Yan waved his hand and walked towards Jing Guodong and Li Yang step by step. I can talk to you, but I can't say that I can't kneel to you. Let's do something practical. Jing Guodong shouted even more vigorously and shouted at the top of his voice, Fang Yan, don't you dare. Help, help, Fang Yan is molesting a female student. The girl's voice was even more shrill and miserable. She shouted with a sobbing tone, if you dare to come over. If you dare to come over, I will die in front of you. Fang Yan, I will not let you go even if I become a ghost. Li Yang waved the wooden stick in his hand vigorously and shouted loudly, if you come over, I will beat you to death. I will beat you to death. This is self-defense, the police will not arrest me. Crack. The wooden stick was in Fang Yan's hand. Fong Yan's right hand was holding one end of the stick. No matter how hard Li Yang tried, he could not pull the stick out of Fong Yan's hand. "Let go," Li Yang shouted as he exerted force. Fong Yan didn't let go. He exerted a bit of force and lifted the wooden stick up. Because Li Yang's hands were holding the stick too tightly, his body was lifted into the air along with the stick by Fong Yan. Fong Yan retracted his right hand and pushed it forward. The stick carried Li Yang's body and flew towards the Bird River. Ah ah ah. Li Yang was like a magical youth flying in the air with a broom in his hand. Of course, this magical youth's magic was not very good. Plop. Li Yang's body fell into the river. Chapter 95. Some people said that insulting others was the behavior of a coward. However, Fang Huohua liked to scold others first, then beat them up. In this day and age, opening a business required a one-stop service. Words could make people unhappy in their hearts, and actions could make people unhappy in their bodies. Fong Yan wanted Jing Guodong and Li Yang to feel uncomfortable. Splash! Li Yang's body fell into the Sparrow River, and the tranquil river was disturbed by his fall. Li Yang didn't know how to swim, so he fell into the river in a hurry and gulped down several mouthfuls of water. He slapped the surface of the water with all his might, causing water to splash everywhere. At the same time, he screamed in a mournful voice, "Help! Help, I don't know how to swim. Help!" Fong Yan didn't seem to hear him. He looked at Jing Guodong and asked, "Do you know how to swim?" Seeing how Fong Yan pushed Li Yang into the Sparrow River a few meters away, Jing Guodong began to feel afraid. Just now, he had been blocking Su Xia with his body in order to put on an act. Now, he began to consciously retreat behind Su Xia. Su Xia saw that Jing Guodong was retreating, so she retreated as well. Thus, between the two of them, Jing Guodong was in front, and then Su Xia was in front. Their positions were constantly changing. "Do you want to jump in yourself, or do you want me to help you?" Fong Yan asked with a smile. "Help." Jing Guodong wanted to scream again. In order to snipe Fong Yan, they had purposely found such a remote location. This was also the reason why no one came to them even though they were screaming. However, the teacher's living quarters were only so big. As long as they shouted even louder, someone would definitely come to them. When Li Yang fell into the water, someone might have already heard the sound. Jing Guodong had just opened his mouth when he saw Fong Yan disappear in front of him. His brain was still trying to figure out where Fong Yan was when he realized that his body was no longer under his control. Su Xia also lost control of his body. Their feet left the ground as they were dragged by Fong Yan single-handedly towards the bank of the Sparrow River. Thump! Fong Yan exerted force with his hands and both of them fell into the Sparrow River at the same time. When Li Yang saw Jing Guodong falling into the water, he shouted even louder, "Master! Zheng, save me! I'm drowning! I don't know how to swim." Jing Guodong was filled with anger. He stood up from the river and scolded, "Idiot, stand up! Why don't you go and die?" The Sparrow River was not deep. With Li Yang's height, as long as he stood steadily, the river water would only reach his chest. It was impossible for him to drink water. But because he was too nervous, he kept plopping in the river and drank several mouthfuls of muddy water. When he heard Jing Guodong's reminder, Li Yang stopped struggling and stood straight in the river. Fong Yan squatted on the bank of the Sparrow River and looked at Jing Guodong, Su Xia, and Li Yang, who wanted to climb up but did not dare to approach Fong Yan. He chuckled and said, "I'll give you a brain teaser. Whoever answers it correctly can go ashore." Many people feel that they look better after washing their hair. Why? No one answered. Jing Guodong was unwilling to answer, and Li Yang did not know how to answer. Su Xia thought for a moment and said, "That's because people feel refreshed and their hair is soft. That's why they feel that they look better." Fang Yan shook his head and said, "That's because their brains are filled with water." "The three of you didn't answer it correctly, so you can only continue soaking in the river," Fang Yan said with a smile. Fang Yan. Jing Guodong was both angry and humiliated. If he could beat Fang Yan. Nonsense. If he could beat Fang Yan, he would have beaten Fang Yan to death a long time ago. There was no need for him to think about it like this. He had used tricks and acted, and he had even been pushed into the river. "I know you hate me," Fang Yan said with a smile. "So what? You can't beat me anyway. My dad will definitely avenge us." "He won't forgive you." Fang Yan looked at Li Yang, who was threatening him, and said, "Your dad can't beat me either. I can beat your whole family," Fang Yan continued. "Let your dad, mom, uncles, aunts, grandpa, and grandma come at me together. Of course, I'm a cultured man. I can do that, but I disdain to do it," Fang Yan said with a serious face. Cultured man. Jing Guodong and Li Yang were so angry that they were about to cry. How could such a person be called a cultured man? Disdain to do it. Disdain to do it. Why are we all soaking in the river now? Fang Yan looked at their round eyes and said, "Let your brains be filled with water, so that I can reason with you. When you're normal, you usually don't listen to what I'm saying. Do you feel better now? Last time you set up Zhu Jian, it was also in this place, right?" Fang Yan asked. "No." Li Yang's first reaction was to deny it. "Li Yang, shut up." Jing Guodong turned around and shouted. Only then did Li Yang realize that he had said the wrong thing. He looked at Jing Guodong in awe and shut up tactfully. Jing Guodong looked at Fang Yan and said, "We don't know what you're talking about." "What?" "My predecessor. Zhu Jian was your language teacher at the beginning of school. Have you forgotten him so quickly?" "We haven't forgotten Zhu Jian. But that kind of person doesn't deserve to be our teacher." Jing Guodong was extremely calm. He knew that this matter was very sensitive. If it was handled carelessly, Fang Yan might have something on him. Fang Yan was not Zhu Jian. He was more than 10 times more cunning than Zhu Jian. Jing Guodong began to be vigilant. Why did Fang Yan suddenly mention Zhu Jian to them? Could it be that he knew the truth about Zhu Jian? Or did he want to reverse Zhu Jian's verdict? It seemed that Fang Yan was getting more and more dangerous. He had to tell his father about the current situation so that he could be mentally prepared. "Is Zhu Jian really not worthy to be your teacher? I think it's you who don't deserve to be his students. What is the truth about that matter? Only God knows, Earth knows, you know, I know, Teacher Zhu knows, even your parents know. There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Do you think you can hide it forever? We never thought of hiding it. Be honest. Be honest to the teacher. Be honest to the school. Be honest to your heart. Carry the sin. Every step is difficult and heavy. Let go of the burden and run to a new life with ease." "Are you crazy?" Jing Guodong said coldly. "Be honest." If he was honest, he would go to the labor camp. The rich life and all the enjoyment he had now would be far away from him. Besides, even if he was willing to be honest, his father would not be willing. "Pa!" Fang Yan stretched his body forward. His legs hooked onto an old vine on the shore. His body was perpendicular to the surface of the Sparrow River. He knocked on Jing Guodong's head and scolded, "Aren't you touched by my advice at all?" Fang Yan used too much force, and Jing Guodong's head was hit. His body tilted backward and he fell into the river once again. Sheng Guodong. Sheng, the sound of noisy footsteps came from behind, and someone was shouting Sheng Guodong's name. Fang Yan exerted a little force with his legs, and his body bounced 90 degrees. He stood upright on the shore. The sound of footsteps was getting closer. The strong light from the flashlight swept across the surface of the river and shone on the faces of Sheng Guodong, Li Yang, and the others. Chen Tao, Chen Dahai, Baldy, and the other 2 security guards of the school quickly ran over. Chen Tao saw Sheng Guodong, Li Yang, and the others standing in the river. He shouted anxiously, "Sheng, are you okay? How are you guys?" Chen Dahai shone the flashlight on Fang Yan's face and shouted, "Fang Yan, do you know what you are doing? You pushed the students into the river. Are you trying to kill them?" Baldy looked at Fang Yan in surprise, and then looked at Sheng Guodong and the others in the river. He did not know what was going on. Just as Fang Yan thought, Chen Tao was indeed the third person hiding in the dark. Not only was Chen Tao hiding in the dark, but his father, Chen Dahai, was also next to him. The reason why they were able to set up this big show was that Chen Dahai played a very important role in it. Sheng Guodong, Li Yang, and Chen Tao hated Fang Yan, and Chen Dahai also hated Fang Yan. Ever since Fang Yan's arrival, his life had entered a period of darkness. 2 days ago, the school also cancelled his position as the teacher of Class 9. In addition to being a substitute teacher, he was also the full-time leader of the mathematics group for the first years. Although he didn't think much of the position of Class 9's homeroom teacher in the past, he still didn't feel good seeing Fang Yan forcibly take it away. This time, Sheng Guodong came to the door, and the 2 sides hit it off. So there was this trap that was specially prepared for Fang Yan tonight. Originally, the father and son wanted to use some sound evidence, but they did not expect Fang Yan to react so quickly. This made them useless as the 3rd and 4th person. What was even more unexpected was that Fang Yan acted so quickly. In a few moves, he threw Sheng Guodong, Li Yang, and Su Xia into the Bird River. They wanted to rescue them, but in half a second, Chen Dahai weighed the difference in strength between the 2 sides, and immediately chose to let Chen Tao rush back to get help. With the people from the security department in Baldy, they would have more witnesses. Moreover, even if they did not succeed in framing them, the presence of the security personnel could also protect their personal safety. Fang Yan's eyes narrowed under the flashlight, and he said coldly, "Teacher Chin, you are now using a weapon to attack my eyes. I am warning you, this kind of action may very well cause a war. I will beat you up." Chen Dahai trembled, and quickly moved the flashlight away. Chapter 96. Humans are very complicated animals. Most of the time, their language isn't to explain anything, but to cover up something. It wasn't until Chen Dahai arrived with his people that Fang Yan's hidden motive of talking so much nonsense was achieved. It has to be said that the trap that Sheng Guodong, Li Yang, and the girl named Su Xia worked together to design was very lethal to Fang Yan. In such a situation, Fang Yan had the following ways to solve the problem. First, flee the scene immediately. This was the smartest, but also the most frustrating way to deal with it. If Fang Yan didn't want to fall into the trap, all their efforts would be in vain. However, being tricked by a few students and fleeing in panic, it would be a loss of face. How could the arrogant Fang Yan be convinced? Second, beat up Sheng Guodong and Li Yang, and then report to the school that they tried to molest the girl, Su Xia. If Su Xia was really molested by them, what were the chances of Fang Yan winning by doing this? The problem was that Su Xia was hired by them to frame Fang Yan. If Su Xia insisted that Fang Yan conspired against her, and Jingguodong and Li Yang were injured by Fang Yan in order to protect her, then Fang Yan wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. Third, which was the trick that Fang Yan used now, muddy the waters. Fang Yan wanted to smear the reputation of Jingguodong and Li Yang under the witness of others. Last time, Zhu Jian had an ambiguous relationship with a girl, and Jingguodong and Li Yang happened to find out and take a key photo, causing Zhu Jian to be the target of public criticism and leave in embarrassment. This time, when Fang Yan tried to molest a female student and was discovered by Jingguodong and Li Yang, Rosefinch's students and teachers were all suspicious. Why was it always Class 9's language teacher who was intimate with the female students? Why did Jingguodong, Li Yang, and Chen Tao always step forward to stop the language teacher every time he did something evil? Fang Yan's reputation in Rosefinch was like the sun in the sky. In order to help his students, he had injured Wu Ren's swordsman and sent him to the hospital. Now, he was given the titles of Most Handsome Male Teacher and Student Guardian by the students. The students liked and trusted him very much. What about Jingguodong, Li Yang, and Chen Tao? They were the school's famous hedonistic trio. It might be an exaggeration to say that everyone hated them, but if you said that 9 out of 10 people hated them, then this sentence was definitely true. What if this matter was publicized? Who would the teachers and students believe? The answer was self-evident. This was the clash of forces. Fang Yan was powerful and upright. Therefore, Jingguodong, Li Yang, and the others were no match for him. Another example was Fang Yan's grandfather, Lu Gong. If Jingguodong, Li Yang, and the others slandered him, their parents and family would beat them up. Jingguodong, Li Yang, and the others wanted to slander Fang Yan, but they had shot themselves in the foot. With this suspicion, Fang Yan's subsequent actions to save Zhu Jian would be much smoother. They suspected that this was the second time that Fang Yan had been slandered. Then, could there be more to Zhu Jian's case? Why don't you try hitting me? Where is the law? Chen Dehai shouted angrily. As he spoke, he quickly shifted the direction of the torchlight. Chen Dehai hated Fang Yan, but he was also afraid of Fang Yan. When the 9th class was in charge of receiving the Wu Ren inspection team, he was not present at the competition, even though he was the class teacher. Therefore, he did not get to see Fang Yan's little universe throw Chiba Haomu into the air and beat him up. However, there were many witnesses at the scene, and they described Fang Yan's kung fu as amazing. Chen Dehai had no choice but to believe it. Baldy and 2 of his colleagues from the security office pulled Jingguodong, Li Yang, and Su Xia out of Sparrow River and asked, "What happened? Why did you fall into the river?" It was Fang Yan. Jingguodong pointed at Fang Yan and cursed. He was the one who threw us into the Sparrow River. Yes, it was him. He even hit us. Li Yang echoed. Su Xia covered her face and sobbed. She said in a choked voice, "Fang Yan is a beast." "He's worse than a beast," Baldy was shocked. He looked at Su Xia and asked, "Student, what do you mean by that?" "Fang Yan molested my girlfriend," Li Yang said angrily. "If we didn't get there in time, my girlfriend would have." Baldy looked at Fang Yan and blurted out, "That's impossible, right?" Fang Yan chuckled and said, "I don't think it's possible either." Chen Dehai was infuriated by Baldy. He reprimanded, "Baldy, explain yourself. How do you know it's impossible? How do you know Fang Yan wouldn't do something like that? As the school's security officer, shouldn't you investigate when a student is in trouble? How can you make a judgment based on your own subjective knowledge?" Baldy smiled awkwardly and said, "Team Leader Chin, don't be angry. We'll get to the bottom of this." Baldy looked at Su Xia and asked, "Student, you said that teacher Fang Yan. What? Do you have any evidence?" Su Xia looked at Chen Tao. Chen Tao stood behind Chen Dahai and shook his head at her. No. Do you have any? Baldy turned to look at Jing Guodong and Li Yang. Do we even need evidence? Jing Guodong was infuriated by this little security guard. We are the evidence. Li Yang and I saw it with our own eyes. Su Xia is the victim, so aren't her words the evidence? Why don't you say that you guys worked together to harm me? Fang Yan said with a smile. You guys chased teacher Zhu Jian away, and now you want to use the same method to chase me away. You're really ruthless. Baldy and the others looked at each other and remembered that this wasn't the first time Jing Guodong and the others had done something like this. Didn't they use this method to chase away a language teacher a while ago? Baldy looked at Jing Guodong and the others suspiciously and said, this is a serious matter. Let's leave it to the school leaders to handle. Jing Guodong looked at Chen Dahai with a questioning gaze. Chen Dahai shook his head and said, it's already so late. It's better not to alert the school leaders. I suggest the security department do the first step of the investigation and report to the school leaders after the results are out. As long as this matter was under the control of the security department, Chen Dahai and the others would have the initiative. After all, the head of the security department, Xiao Dezhu, was one of them. Besides, Chen Dahai had already noticed that the situation wasn't good for them. Now they didn't have any evidence to convict Fang Yan. Jing Guodong and Li Yang's reputation was too bad. Even Su Xia's reputation in the school wasn't good. Everyone said they were right, and everyone said they were right. The final result might be that no one could do anything to the other. The most important thing was that if this matter was spread out, perhaps Jing Guodong and Li Yang would be at a disadvantage. Thinking of this, Chen Dahai was a little angry. You guys. Why can't you pay more attention? Don't you know that it's very difficult for bad people to do bad things these days? Okay, then I'll call Chief Xiao and report it, Baldy said. Such a big matter, he couldn't bear it as a small security guard. He had to let the head of the security department come forward to solve it. Fang Yan patted Baldy's shoulder and said, investigate it as soon as possible and give me justice. Sure. Baldy nodded. Baldy. Chen Dahai roared angrily. We will definitely deal with it impartially. Deal with it impartially. Baldy quickly changed his words. Things went as Fang Yan expected. Because Jing Guodong, Li Yang, and the victim, Su Xia, couldn't produce any evidence, this matter could only be left unsettled. Because of the school's security department's intervention, the rumor that Fang Yan attempted to molest Su Xia spread in Rosefinch Secondary. What? Mr. Fang Yan molested Su Xia. God, that's impossible, right? It's Su Xia's own imagination, right? Why didn't she take a look at herself? Su Xia's reputation is so bad, and she's not good looking. How could Mr. Fang Yan like her? Su Xia is not as good looking as me. Su Xia was originally a celebrity in the school. She was beautiful, wore heavy makeup, and walked the sexy route. She was the big sister of a group of female delinquents. She changed boyfriends faster than she changed her clothes. Later, when she got together with Li Yang, she temporarily stabilized. Because of Fang Yan's molestation, her reputation was suddenly pushed to the peak. Moreover, someone had given this incident a name, Fantasy Gate. It meant that this was completely a fantasy of Su Xia, a love-struck girl. It was to attract Fang Yan's attention. Jing Guodong and Li Yang's reputation was too bad, and they were too vicious, so no one was willing to talk about them. On the contrary, the two of them weren't affected too much. This was a physical education class. Su Xia was surrounded by a group of her best friends as she walked towards the stadium. Su Xia. A clear voice called out. Su Xia turned around and saw an outrageously beautiful girl sitting on the steps of the basketball court. The girl was wearing a rosefinch uniform, and her long hair was draped over her shoulders. One of her ears was plugged with headphones, and the other was held in her hand so that she could talk to others. She didn't have any makeup on her face, and she didn't have any accessories on her body. However, it was this aura that was naturally revealed that made people feel as if they had forgotten about the mundane world at the sight of it. Qin Tian. The famous Qin Tian in the school. It was as if someone had cast a spell on her. Su Xia stopped in her tracks, and so did the rest of her friends. Everyone's breathing slowed down, and they stared unblinkingly at the girl in the uniform on the steps. Come here. Qin Tian shouted. Su Xia glanced at her friends, and took the initiative to walk towards where Qin Tian was sitting. She smiled and said, Senior Tian, are you looking for me? Slap. Qin Tian slapped Su Xia's face. Chapter 97. The slap was sudden and inexplicable. Su Xia was completely dumbfounded. She didn't understand how she had suffered such an undeserved disaster. All along, she had kept a considerable distance from the rosefinch goddess, Qin Tian. Qin Tian was very famous, but she rarely appeared in public, let alone participated in any club activities at school. Su Xia's fame wasn't as good as Qin Tian's, but she appeared more frequently in school, and most students knew her. Some of Su Xia's best friends thought that she should be the real rosefinch goddess. Su Xia also thought so. A beautiful woman could always pick out some flaws from the faces of equally beautiful women. Was it because she had such thoughts that Qin Tian asked her to slap her? However, she had never revealed it to others. How did she know? Su Xia's skin was white and tender. After being slapped by Qin Tian, a purplish-red palm print immediately appeared on her cheek. Su Xia opened her mouth and wanted to ask why. I didn't provoke you. Why did you hit me? However, when the words came to her mouth, she couldn't say anything. Su Xia's group of best friends saw that Su Xia was being slapped and ran forward to help her. At this time, Qin Tian raised his head and glanced at them. When they met Qin Tian's threatening gaze, they immediately stopped. Slap. Qin Tian's slap landed on Su Xia's left cheek. Slap. This was the third slap. Get lost. Qin Tian shouted. Su Xia stood still and stared at Qin Tian. She looked like she wanted to pounce on Qin Tian and fight to the death. After the 3 slaps, Qin Tian treated Su Xia as if she was invisible. She put the headphones that she had just taken off into her ears and focused on enjoying the moving music and the autumn wind of the sports field. After a long time, Su Xia's eyes turned red, and big tears rolled down her cheeks. He turned around and ran back the way he came. When the group of female delinquents saw Su Xia running away, they looked at each other and hurriedly chased after Su Xia. From the beginning to the end, no one scolded Qin Tian, and no one dared to step forward to defend him. They saw Qin Tian, but they could only look at Qin Tian in this way. They had a feeling that Qin Tian was from a different world from them. Tangxing walked to Qin Tian's side and sat down. He said with a smile, "How can you be like this? You should at least give me a reason to hit someone, right? If you slap her 3 times, she probably won't even know why she's being hit, right?" Qin Tian glanced at Tangxing, but he didn't take the earphones off his ears and said, "She will figure it out." He didn't understand now. You'll understand later. Qin Tian didn't even have the mood to smile when he heard the rumors about Fang Yan and Su Xia. Framing. What a shameful framing. You don't even want to talk to her. You're really stingy. Her heart is too dirty, Chinitian said expressionlessly. Tangqing grinned and said, Jingguodong Liang is really stupid. He thinks he can drive Fang Yan away with such a dirty trick. Does he think Fang Yan is Zhu Jian? 1 Fang Yan is worth 100 Zhu Jian. Chinitian turned his head and glanced at Tangqing with dissatisfaction. 8,000. Chinitian was still not satisfied. 10,000. Fang Yan is Fang Yan, Chinitian said. Okay. Fang Yan is Fang Yan. Tangqing's body was lying on the steps, and he imitated Chinitian to bask in the sun. Chinitian, you look like a crazy fan defending the rights of her idol. Jingguodong and Li Yang want to drive Fang Yan away. You won't go and slap them, will you? If you really want to do that, you must tell me in advance so I can go and watch. Men should solve their own problems, Chinitian said. I think he must be embarrassed to slap a woman, so I did it for him. Tangqing couldn't sit still. He looked at Chinitian's almost perfect side face with burning eyes. He looked at the pink and white skin that was slightly transparent under the sun and the fine pink fluff that could only be seen at such a close distance. His heart was beating fast, but he tried to keep his voice steady and said, Chinitian, you don't really like Mr. Fang, do you? Chinitian's beautiful eyes were full of smiles. She looked at Tangqing and said, you deliberately pointed out his identity as a teacher. Do you want to add some resistance between us? I hope you can be sober. He is a teacher, and we are students. It is impossible for a teacher and a student. How do you know it is impossible? Chinitian asked. Tangqing really couldn't guarantee this. He knew Chinitian. He knew her character. When she decided on something, it was really difficult to change her mind. You see, even you believe that we will be together in the future. Chinitian said with a smile. I don't believe it. Tangqing said with a very firm voice. I never believed that you two will be together. I only believe that we two will be together. Only the two of us are the most suitable. Chinitian, I like you. Can't you feel it at all? But I don't like you. Chinitian said indifferently. Fang Yan was in big trouble. When he returned to the office after teaching 2 Chinese classes to the students of Class 9, a folded white paper crane fell from the textbook. He held the paper crane and flew in the air twice before he realized that there was something wrong. Who put the paper crane in his textbook? Why did they put the paper crane in his textbook? He opened the paper crane with doubts and expectations. Sure enough, there was a love letter written to him. Mr. Fang, I like you so much. Chinitian. This was the first name that came to Fang Yan's mind. She was the only one who dared to confess her love to him so openly. However, Fang Yan soon ruled out his doubts about Chinitian. Chinitian was such a proud girl. If she liked a man, she would express it to him face to face. How could she choose to express it in a love letter? Moreover, there was no signature at the end of this love letter. This was not Chinitian's style. Jingguodong. The reason why Fang Yan guessed that it was Jingguodong's doing was that he was worried that Jingguodong would use other ways to frame him after his plan failed that night. As for the 3 problematic students in his class, Fang Yan never dared to take them lightly. They wanted to expel him from the school, and Fang Yan also wanted to find a way to help Zhu Jian clear the shame from them. Good people should be rewarded, and good teachers should be respected by others. However, if it was just a love letter, how could it frame him? Or was it really written by a girl in the class? If that was the case, Fang Yan would have a headache. Puppy love. Puppy love was a problem that middle school teachers had to face. What was more annoying was that this puppy love did not happen between students, but the students directly wrote a letter to the teacher to confess their love. Fong Yan had only had one failed love experience in his more than 20 years of life, so he was still very shy and unfamiliar with this magical thing called love. However, he knew that if he did not handle it carefully, he might hurt both himself and others. This matter could not be made public, so he could only find the writer quietly and solve the problem without hurting her self-esteem. Just when Fong Yan was in a daze, Teacher Kai in the office greeted Fong Yan while cleaning the table, and said, "Mr. Fong, it's time to get off work. Why don't you go back to eat?" Ever since the Wu Ren inspection team arrived, ever since Fong Yan became famous after the battle, and ever since he was promoted from an ordinary language teacher to the prestigious position of Class 9's homeroom teacher, he realized that his popularity in the office had improved tremendously. The teachers who did not like him before would take the initiative to say good morning to him when he went to work in the morning, and the teachers who were usually indifferent to him would also say hello to him when they came home from school. Even during the break, the teachers would generously give a small piece of potato chips or bread to Fong Yan. Fong Huohuo finally felt the warmth of home in Zhuke Middle School. "I'm going back now," said Fong Yan. He put the paper crane in his pocket, then got up and walked out of the office. Just as he walked out of the office, he saw Baldy running towards him in a hurry. "Baldy, what are you busy with?" asked Fong Yan with a smile. In order for the students to learn a farewell to Cambridge again, in Sparrow River, Fong Yan had specially gone to borrow Baldy's black canoe, which the school used for salvage. Through that encounter, Fong Yan had conquered him with his idle handsome appearance and extraordinary poet temperament, and the two of them had maintained a very close friendship. When Baldy saw Fong Yan, he said, "I'm looking for you." "Mr. Fong, why is your phone out of battery? I can't get through to you. Someone is looking for you at the school gate." "Looking for me? Who?" asked Fong Yan. "You'll know when you get there," said Baldy. "A woman?" asked Fong Yan. "A man," said Baldy. "A man?" Fong Yan thought about it. "I don't have any male friends in Huaqing. Du Qing wouldn't come to school to look for me, and Jiang Zhulu. If he wanted to see me, he wouldn't have asked Baldy to come over and inform me. He might have been hit on the head with a stick." Fong Yan followed Baldy to the school gate and saw two figures, one tall and one short, waiting outside the security booth. Fong Yan turned and walked away. "I don't know them." Chapter 98. Seeing Fong Yan turn around and leave, the short fatso chased after him and shouted anxiously, "Junior Marshal Uncle, Junior Marshal Uncle. Don't run. I'm Fong Yingying. Look at me carefully. I'm Fong Yingying." Fong Yan was angry in his heart. "I ran because I saw clearly that you were Fong Yingying." The Fong family still came to the door, which made Fong Yan have the urge to immediately pack his bags and buy a ticket to run away. If the Fong family could come to the door, why couldn't the Yi family? This time it was hero and warrior. Who could guarantee that the next one wouldn't be violent and gentle? The tall man ran in front of Fong Yan in a few steps and said like a child, "Junior Marshal Uncle, I'm hungry. If you're hungry, let's go eat." "I don't have money." Baldy felt that his IQ was not enough. He looked at the three people entangled together and shouted, "Fong Yan, they really seem to know you. It's your nephew. It can't be wrong. Isn't this nonsense?" Fong Yan thought gloomily. He also knew that since hero and warrior had come to the door, it was impossible for him to escape. This was the school gate. It was not a good idea to make a ruckus here. Fong Yan stopped and looked at hero and warrior. He said, "Let's go eat." "Thank you, Junior Marshal Uncle," the short and fat Fong Yingying said happily. "All the heroes are starving." Fang Yan took hero and warrior to a Hunan restaurant at the school gate. In order to talk more conveniently, he asked the proprietress for a small private room. As soon as the three of them sat down, the waiter came in with the menu and asked with a smile, "What would you like to eat?" Fang Yan took the plate and said, "Fish with tofu, braised pork, scrambled eggs with chives," and, crack, a crisp sound was heard, and the room became deathly quiet. The waiter stared at Fang Haohan with his eyes wide open and said in disbelief, He bit the cup. Junior Martial Uncle, the hero is eating the cup again. Fang Yingying complained. Fang Yan looked at Fang Haohan and said helplessly, "Hero, the dishes will be served soon. Can you bear with it for a while?" "Junior Martial Uncle, I am hungry," Fang Haohan said with an infinite grievance. Fang Yan waved his hand and said, "Only this one. You should fill your stomach first so that you can eat later." "Thank you, Junior Martial Uncle," Fang Haohan said happily. Then, he put the glass in his mouth and began to chew. A hand-torn cabbage. "Girl, a hand-torn cabbage. Hurry up and write," Fang Yan urged. I. The little girl's hand holding the pen trembled. "Eating a glass cup as a dessert. What kind of people are they? They won't bite, right?" The little girl felt that she was in danger and was very scared. "Let me do it," Fang Yan said. He took the pen and the menu from the little girl's hand. After adding a few vegetables such as hand-torn cabbage and vermicelli, he handed the menu to the little girl and said, "Give us a big bowl of noodles. No rice or wine. Come up quickly." He pointed at Fang Haohan and said, "If you serve the dishes slowly, he may eat all the cups on the table." The little girl's body trembled violently. She looked at Fang Haohan, who was eating the glass happily and blissfully, as if she was looking at a monster. She opened the door and ran away in a panic. Fang Yan looked at Fang Haohan and said, "Hero, don't eat glass in public in the future. It's not good. Can we eat in your house?" Fang Haohan asked. "My house?" Fang Yan stared at the hero vigilantly and said, "When are you two going back?" Fang Yingying glanced at Fang Haohan sadly and said with a smile, "Junior Martial Uncle, we're not going back. Where are we going to live?" "We'll live wherever you live," Fang Yingying said. Seeing Fang Yan's expression change, he quickly explained, "We don't have to sleep on the bed. We can sleep on the floor or in the yard. Just give us a place to stay." "Who told you to come out and find me?" Fang Yan asked. "Master," Fang Yingying said. "Old drunkard." The hero's master was Fang Yan's grandfather, Fang Hui's disciple and adopted son. Fang Hui only had one son, Fang Yixing, and Fang Yixing only had one son, Fang Yan. The Fang family had only one son. Fang Hui was a martial arts master. His Tai Chi was superb, and people called him a shadowless hand. The reason why Fang Hui had such a nickname was because he rarely fought with others. Even if he did fight, it was hard to see him fight. He didn't use his hands to fight, because it was embarrassing. This was exactly the case for people like Fang Hui, who had reached the peak of martial arts. Due to Fang Yan's lack of ability, he was still doing this kind of a shameful thing. Fang Hui loved martial arts, and he put all his hope on his son, Fang Yixing. He didn't expect that Fang Yixing only liked reading, painting, and learning, and had no interest in Tai Chi at all. Fang Hui fought and forced his son, but Fang Yixing rejected him from the bottom of his heart. Even if he learned some punches and kicks, it was just perfunctory, and Fang Hui didn't like it at all. Fang Hui was so disappointed with his son that he chose the most talented disciple among his disciples, Mo Qingdi, as his adopted son. He wanted him to replace Fang Yixing and inherit the Tai Chi legacy. After Fang Yan was born, Fang Hui placed all his hopes on him. He nurtured him wholeheartedly and taught him personally. He wanted him to become a useful person quickly. According to seniority, Mo Qingdi should be Fang Yan's uncle. However, Fang Yan's master was his grandfather, Fang Hui, so he and Mo Qingdi were brothers. This was also the reason why the hero called Fang Yan Jr. Martial Uncle. Family, there was a family, and there was a door, so the title was a bit confusing. Mo Qingdi was a rare martial arts genius, and he felt the Tai Chi state 6 years earlier than his master Fang Hui. Of course, his record was broken by Fang Yan. Fang Yan felt the Tai Chi state at the age of 22, and was called a weirdo by the Fang family. However, Mo Qingdi's life was unfortunate. After experiencing a huge blow in his life, he became addicted to alcohol, and was called an old drunkard. The hero were two disciples that Fang Yan's senior martial brother Mo Qingdi brought back from outside. They didn't have this name before, but when Fang Yan was chatting with them, he asked them what their dreams were. At that time, Fang Yingying, who was not called Fang Yingying, said that after learning martial arts, he would become a hero who would fight for justice. Fang Haohan, who was not called Fang Haohan, nodded while eating glass. So, Fang Yan gave the short and fat Fang Yingying the name Fang Yingying, and the tall and thin Fang Haohan could only be called Fang Haohan. Hearing Fang Yan call their master an old drunkard, Fang Yingying's face became gloomy, and the glass in Fang Haohan's mouth became tasteless. It was tasteless in the first place, okay? Fang Yingying looked at Fang Yan and said, "Master said he has nothing to teach us, so he asked us to come to you and follow you to explore the world. We will go wherever Master says you go. Let us protect you." Fang Haohan swallowed the glass and said aloud, "But I'm just a language teacher, where can I go? Do I need your protection?" Fang Yan said angrily. Seeing that Fang Yan was angry, the hero immediately lowered his head and said nothing. Fang Yan sighed softly and said, "How does your master know I'm in watching?" "Everyone knows." Fang Haohan raised his head and said, "What did you say?" Fang Yan's face turned pale. Fang Yingying knew that Fang Haohan didn't know how to speak, so he quickly helped explain and said, "Master said you have nowhere else to go. Huaqing is the safest place. So he asked us to come to Huaqing to find you." "My parents know I'm in Huaqing?" Fang Yan asked. "They should know." Fang Yingying saw that Fang Yan's expression was unfriendly, so he quickly changed his words and said, "Or maybe they don't know." "Do they know or not?" Fang Yan slapped the table. "They know." "Who else knows?" "The Fang family knows, the Yi family knows, and everyone else who should know knows," Fang Yingying said honestly. Fang Yan wanted to cry but no tears came out. "I'm so low-key, but I'm still so flirtatious in the eyes of others. Does Yi Ro know?" Fang Yan asked. This was the question he was most concerned about. He ran away right before the competition. Yi Ro was probably the angriest one. If this woman knew, it would be no small matter. However, the Fang family knew, the Yi family knew, so how could Yi Ro not know? He was just hoping for a little luck. Just a little. Fang Yingying nodded and then shook his head. "What does that mean?" Fang Yan asked. "Does she know or not?" "When we left, Miss Yi was drinking with Master. Miss Yi asked us to bring you a message." The muscles on Fang Yan's face twitched. He felt that his heart was about to break. "What did she say?" Fang Yan asked bitterly. He felt that his life was too hard. "What kind of god did I offend?" "Miss Yi said that she would pretend not to know that you were in Huaqing." Fang Yan breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, That means she won't pursue this matter anymore, Miss Yi also said. Fong Yan wanted to beat Fong Yingying to death. Would it kill you to say everything at once? Because of Fong Yingying's big turn, Fong Yan's heart was hung up high again. You must wash your face every day. She is afraid that she will dirty her hands, Fong Yingying said. Fong Yan felt that his life was dark. He couldn't live like this. Chapter 99. If someone told Fong Yan to wash his face every day because he wanted to slap Fong Yan's face, Fong Yan would have already rushed up to fight with him. If this person was Yuan Rou, Fong Yan had also rushed up to fight with her. But he didn't win. For Teacher Hua, if one day he could beat Yuan Rou, he would definitely rush over and kiss her fiercely. He didn't hit her, he wanted to humiliate her. Sometimes, a mouth can hurt others more than a fist. Fong Yan had already made sufficient preparations, and was just short of beating Yuan Rou to the ground. Some people say that the fist is the hard truth. In Fong Yan's eyes, this sentence was simply the truth. Why did Yuan Rou dare to bully him like this? Wasn't it because her fists were harder than his? Otherwise, would she dare to bully him? He would have beaten her to the point that even her parents wouldn't recognize her. Hearing Fong Yingying's words, Fong Yan was both anxious and angry. He was anxious because that little girl Yuan Rou was still holding a grudge. Furthermore, she could come to Flower City and beat him up at any time. He was angry because she threatened him in front of so many people. Wasn't that not giving him face? Fong Yan slammed his palm on the table and shouted, "How dare the Yi family come to our Fong family's territory and behave atrociously, and even say that they want to injure our Fong family's disciple? My personal honor is nothing, but where is the reputation of our Fong family? Where is our dignity? This is too much. This is too much." Fong Yan looked at Fong Yingying and asked, "Your master was there?" "Yes." Fong Yingying nodded. He didn't say anything. "Yes." Fong Yingying took away the cup in front of Fong Haohan, worried that he wouldn't be able to control himself and swallow the new cup. "What did he say?" Fong Yan asked. "Master said." Fong Yingying looked at Fong Yan's expression and said carefully, "That's how it should be done." Fong Yan almost spat out a mouthful of blood. That old drunkard. Was he still a member of the Fong family? Is he still my grandpa's disciple and my senior brother? How could he speak up for a woman at this time? Almost no one in the Fong family liked Yi Rou. This was because she had mercilessly beaten up Fong Yan time and time again until his skin was torn, his teeth were broken, and his legs were broken. She had really caused the Fong family to lose face. How could the Fong family like their nemesis? The reason why she said it was almost rather than absolutely was because there was another person in the Fong family who liked and admired her. That person was Fong Yan's eldest senior brother, the old drunkard. He didn't know which side of Yi Rou caught the old drunkard's eye, but he said that this girl was straightforward, generous, and had a bright future. Moreover, Yi Rou also had a hobby that matched the temper of an old drunkard. Yi Rou was fond of drinking, and it was not difficult for her to drink 2 or 3 kilograms of high liquor. Even the old drunkard could only surrender when he competed with her in drinking. Yi Rou and the old drunkard were bosom friends in the past, so the old drunkard treated Yi Rou much better than he treated his junior brother. Fong Yan pointed at Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan and said, "Go back. You two go back quickly. Your master treated me like this, and he still has the face to send you to my side to eat. Get out of here. Junior martial uncle, master asked us to protect you." Fong Haohan said with a simple and honest face. Fong Yingying patted Fong Haohan's arm, motioning him not to speak casually. He looked at Fong Yen with an obsequious smile and said, Hao-hun and I are of course on the side of Junior Marshal Uncle. That Yi-ro. Miss, she has nothing to do with us. Am I right? Ever since we were young, the person that Hiro and I admired the most was Junior Marshal Uncle. Our ultimate dream is to follow little Marshal Uncle to brave the world, do chivalrous deeds, and become true heroes. Fong Ying originally wanted to call Yi-ro by her name, but thinking of this woman's usual arrogant and domineering style, he quickly added the respectful title of Miss. Fong Hao-hun nodded and said, That's right. Fong Yen sighed softly, knowing that since these two burdens had come, it would not be so easy to drive them away. He looked at Fong Ying and asked, Do my parents know that you came here? Both Master and Madam know. What did they say? They didn't say anything. Then they pretended not to know. Fong Yen said. My father. He wasn't angry, right? Fong Ying thought for a moment, shook his head and said, I don't know. But on the day young Master ran away, Master smashed his study. Fong Yan wanted to hit someone. He wanted to give Fong Yingxiong, who looked like a bad guy, a good thrashing. How could you tease other people's feelings like this? The old man smashed his most precious study, which he usually didn't let people enter. Don't you know whether he was angry or not? Fong Yan felt that he was very weak and helpless now. Fong Ying noticed Fong Yan's murderous eyes, shook his big head and said seriously, I really don't know. How can we, as his disciples, guess what's on Master's mind? Fong Ying, if you make me angry again, get out of here. Fong Yen scolded. Even if you don't make me angry, get out after this meal. I won't take you in. I can't protect myself now. I'm ready to run away at any time. Then we'll accompany Junior Marshal Uncle to run away. Fong Ying said with loyalty. Many people can take care of each other. Yes, that's right. Fong Hao-hun nodded and said. The door of the private room was opened, and a waiter came in with a big porcelain bowl. It was fish with tofu with a lot of chili. Fong Yen rinsed the chopsticks with tea and said, Eat, eat. You two get out of here after the meal. The actions of the two heroes did not look heroic at all. The two of them tore the chopsticks out of the disposable bag. Ignoring the fiery red chili on the chopsticks and the sizzling hot oil, they scooped up the fish and fed it to their mouths. It was so hot that they couldn't bear to spit it out even if they screamed. Fong Yen glanced at them with a noble and cold look and said, I often eat this dish. After saying that, he felt very sour in his heart. If they were at home, there would be all kinds of delicacies. What kind of delicacies couldn't they eat? When the waiter closed the door and left, he was still looking at the faces of the three people in the room curiously, not knowing what he was looking for. When the second dish was served, the waiter became a tall and strong middle-aged uncle with an oily face. The middle-aged uncle put the plate of shredded cabbage on the table and said with a smile, Three little brothers, I'm sorry to bother you. Fong Yen looked at the middle-aged man and asked, What's the matter? Well, it's like this. I heard from our little sister here that there's a little brother who can eat raw glass. Is there anyone who can cook and eat glass? Fong Yen asked. He was in a bad mood originally, and the waitress told everyone what happened in their private room, which made him even more unhappy. Therefore, his tone when talking to the middle-aged man was not very friendly. Haha, little brother is really humorous. Really humorous. The middle-aged man was a little embarrassed. However, he seemed to have a very strong ability to resist attacks. He still didn't give up his goal. He looked at Fong Yen and said, It's like this. When the little sister said that someone can eat glass, many guests outside heard it. A table of guests wanted to invite this little brother who can eat glass to go out and perform for everyone. Fong Yan's face became more gloomy. He pointed to the door and said, "Go out." The middle-aged man still wanted to persuade him and said, "Little brother, you can think about it. If it's true, they are willing to pay for your expenses today. Everyone is just looking for fun, right?" Fong Yan was amused by the middle-aged man and said, "Are you the owner of this restaurant?" "Yes. My surname is Su. Su Bin." The middle-aged man smiled and reached out his big hand to Fong Yan and said, "Thank you, little brother, for coming to my small restaurant." Fong Yan didn't shake hands with the fat boss. He pointed to the door and said, "It's enough to confirm that you are the boss. You can go out now. I won't come back to your restaurant in the future." I'm just helping someone to say something. Since you don't want to, then forget it. You guys eat and drink well." The middle-aged man looked unhappy, but he still turned and walked out of the box. Fong Haohan looked at Fong Yan and said, "I'll go and give them one. I'm not full anyway." "That's right. You can also earn money for a meal." Fong Yingying echoed. "Paw." Fong Yan slammed his palm on the table. "Do you want to stay?" Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan nodded quickly. They came all the way to find Fong Yan. Didn't they want to follow him to conquer the world? "Then listen to me," Fong Yan said. "Eat." Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan nodded and began to eat again. Clang! The door of the box was kicked open from the outside. Because the quality of the door was not very good, it looked shaky and could fall at any time. They saw the owner of the restaurant, Su Bin, who had just walked out of the box, standing in front of several young people and kept explaining something. Those young people didn't take Su Bin seriously at all, and forcibly barged into the private room. The man with the brush cut looked at Fong Yan and the hero and said, "What's wrong? We're asking you to go out and cheer for everyone, but you don't want to give us face. If you don't give us face, we'll also make you lose face." Fong Yan tasted the fresh and tender fish in his mouth and said with a smile, "I'll give you face if you have face. If you don't, why should I give you face? If you want others to give you face, you have to say where your face is first, right?" You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.